HeyMax and Japan, the complete strategic analysis. This is an independent analysis of HeyMax's position in Japan, researched in August 2026 from public sources. Nobody paid for it and nobody previewed it. Not HeyMax, not Japan Airlines, not any Point-Site, bank, or platform named in it. Nothing in it is financial advice. It is the 10th volume in a series that has examined a home market, a real entry, an abandoned one, 3 promises, 1 refusal, the company itself, and its product roadmap. Japan is different from all of them for one reason that took 9 volumes to earn its significance. Japan is the only promised market where the rail arrived before the deadline. On the 28th of January, 2026, HeyMax committed in writing to entering Japan, Taiwan, and Australia by the end of the year. The Taiwan volume concluded that promise was not credible. The Australia record is a launch that died in 10 weeks. This series has priced HeyMax's promises at approximately 0. And then, on the 2nd of July, 2026, HeyMax switched on a live, direct, one-to-one transfer into JAL Mileage Bank. Instant, 1,000-mile minimum, then single-mile blocks. Japan holds the one promise with evidence behind it. That would make this an easy volume if Japan were an easy market. It is the opposite. Japan is the most sophisticated points economy on Earth. One loyalty program alone counts roughly 150 million members, more members than Japan has people. Earning airline miles from shopping is not a niche here but a named national hobby. Poikatsu, the point-turning game. Its serious players are called Rakuten, ground milers, and the best of them bank 200,000 JAL miles a year without boarding a plane. So Japan inverts the question every previous volume asked. The niche is occupied. The spread is priced weekly, in public, by a community that treats conversion rate tables the way other countries treat sports statistics. The question is whether a foreign platform with a genuinely sharp rate, 1-to-1 into JAL, against a domestic benchmark of 50%, can matter in a market that already does this better than anywhere else on Earth. And one complication arrived in the same month as the rail. From July 2026, JAL and ANA roughly doubled their international fuel surcharges, 65,000 yen each way to North America or Europe, and the surcharge applies to award tickets. The rail opened, and the toll doubled. Same ground rules as every volume, sources for every claim, labels on every estimate, absences documented precisely. 20 chapters. The ground, the field, the toll, the record, the reception, the economics, the battlefield, the people, the partners, the plan, and a verdict with falsifiers in both directions. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Inbound Nation. Every volume in this series opens with travel demand, because a miles platform is a bet on people wanting to fly. And Japan's demand chapter is unlike any of the previous 9, because the arrow points the wrong way. Start with the number a strategy deck would lead with. In 2025, 14.73 million Japanese residents left the country, up 13.3% on the previous year. Growth on its face, a market recovering, now the number underneath it. In 2019, that figure was just over 20 million. Japanese outbound travel is running at roughly 73% of its pre-pandemic level, 6 years after the pandemic began. A 26.6% hole that every other major market in this series has long since closed. Korea's outbound set an all-time record in 2025. Taiwan set a record. Singapore never really stopped. Hong Kong's recovery was the premise of an entire acquisition. Japan alone has not come back, and the monthly numbers show no catch-up curve, around 1 million departures a month through the spring, a summer peak of 1.65 million in August. A market oscillating around 3/4 of its old self, not climbing back to it. The reasons are structural, not cyclical, and the largest is the yen. A currency that spent 2024 and 2025 in the range of 150 to 160 to the US dollar, roughly doubled the real cost of a Hawaii holiday against the yen's old strength. The famous graduation trips to Europe, the honeymoons to the American West Coast, repriced from aspirational to prohibitive. Add the surcharge regime that Chapter 9 covers in full, 65,000 yen each way to North America from July 2026, applied to award tickets too, and the marginal Japanese long-haul trip has been priced out of the mass market twice over. Once in cash, once in miles. The monthly pattern tells you exactly what survived. The summer peak was driven by short-haul. Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia. The places where the yen's damage is smaller and the surcharges are a fraction of the long-haul figure. Japanese travelers still spent about 4.7 trillion yen abroad in 2025, but it is short-haul spending now. Corridor spending, the kind that fills regional cabins rather than trans-Pacific ones. Pause on what that repricing did to the psychology of the market, because it matters for every chapter after this one. A Japanese household planning a holiday in 2012 compared a Guam package against a Kyushu onsen weekend and found them close. The same comparison today is not close. It is a multiple. And when a whole country's long-haul travel becomes a luxury good, two things happen to its loyalty economy at once. The casual traveler drops out of the miles game entirely. There is no trip to save for. And the committed traveler doubles down because the award ticket is now the only instrument that still reaches the destination at a price a salary can survive. The middle hollows out. The extremes harden. Japan's miles market in 2026 is not a smaller version of its 2019 self. It is a more concentrated one, fewer players, higher stakes, deeper skill. Which is exactly the shape of market this series' subject serves best, and exactly the shape its incumbents were built for. Hold that thought through the whole book. If this were the whole picture, Japan would look like a weak demand market for a miles business, and this would be a short book. It is not the whole picture, because Japan's travel story is not about Japanese leaving. It is about everyone else arriving. In 2025, 42.68 million foreign visitors entered Japan, up 15.8% year-on-year, and more than 10 million above 2019's record. Japan is not merely recovered as a destination. It is the strongest inbound story in the developed world, running at all-time highs while its outbound sits in a structural trough. And the weak yen that suppresses outbound is the same force that makes Japan irresistible to everyone holding stronger currencies. Which is to say, precisely the Singaporeans, Hong Kongers, Taiwanese, and Koreans whose markets this series has spent 9 volumes mapping. The queue outside the Shibuya Sky observation deck is, demographically, HeyMax's existing member base, plus its 4 most analyzed target markets, holding currencies near historic highs against the yen, in a country running a national strategy of tourism monetization. Now put the two flows side by side, and notice what they mean for a rewards platform headquartered in Singapore. The outbound flow, Japanese travelers going abroad, is the flow a domestic Japanese loyalty business monetizes. The flight bookings, the travel insurance, the destination shopping. It is depressed, yen-constrained, and short-haul skewed. And the domestic giants of Chapter 2 already own every yen of it. Any HeyMax entry aimed at this flow arrives late, foreign, and rate disadvantaged, into a shrinking pie. The inbound flow, 42.68 million arrivals, spending at record levels, is the flow HeyMax already touches. Today, without a Japanese entity, a Japanese app, or a single Japanese user. The Singapore volume established that Japan is the single most important destination for HeyMax's home members. The Taiwan and Korea volumes measured corridors of 6.76 million and 9.46 million trips a year into Japan, from just 2 of HeyMax's target markets. Every hotel night in Osaka booked through HeyMax by a Singaporean member. Every Klook activity in Kyoto. Every Agoda reservation in Sapporo funded by a card linked in Hong Kong. That is Japan revenue, on travel commissions of 10 to 25%, and HeyMax earns it now, on contracts already signed, in the vertical this series has repeatedly measured as its richest. And notice the direction of every incentive in that second flow. The Japanese government wants more of it. Tourism is the national growth strategy, with official targets that treat the current record as a floor. The airlines want more of it. Chapter 10 will show JAL actively selling its mileage program to foreign platforms precisely to capture inbound demand. The merchants want more of it. The department stores run tax-free counters. The electronics chains staff Mandarin and English speakers. The convenience of the visiting spender is a national project. A rewards platform that delivers high-spending Southeast Asian travelers into that machine is not fighting anyone. It is pushing on doors the entire country is holding open. Contrast every prior volume, where HeyMax's entry meant taking something from an incumbent. Serving Japan-bound demand takes nothing from anybody. It feeds the one machine every Japanese institution wants fed. This is the same asymmetry the Korea volume ended on: serve the market from outside, but with the sign flipped on every variable that made Korea a refusal. Korea's inbound corridor from HeyMax's markets was modest. Japan's is the largest in Asia, the region's default holiday. Korea offered no rail into the flag carrier and no prospect of one. Japan's rail is live. Korea's point-to-mile spread had been competed to zero by a super app giving the product away. Japan's spread, as chapters 4 and 5 will show, is the subject of a national optimization game with published prices that leave visible room underneath. Korea was a market to serve from outside because entering was pointless. Japan, at minimum, is a market to serve from outside because serving it from outside is already profitable. The question of entry stacks on top of a business that exists either way. One more piece of framing, because it shapes everything after. Japanese outbound demand being depressed does not mean Japanese miles demand is depressed. The opposite, and the causality matters. When flying is expensive, miles become more valuable, not less. The award ticket is the only affordable route to the premium cabin left, and the miles balance becomes the household's hedge against a weak currency. Japan's ground miler culture, the industrial-scale earning of miles without flying that Chapter 4 documents, is precisely an adaptation to expensive flying. Built by a population that refuses to give up the trip and has engineered a way to pay for it in a currency it can mint at home. The 14.73 million number measures trips taken. It does not measure the size of the audience accumulating miles for the trip they have not yet taken. That audience is enormous, organized, and better at this game than any population on Earth. So the ground truth of this volume, stated once, because every subsequent chapter stands on it. Japan is two markets. An inbound market of 42.68 million annual arrivals that HeyMax already serves and already earns from, the strongest version of the corridor thesis in the series, live today. And a domestic market of the world's most sophisticated points optimizers, running at scale through machinery that chapters 2 through 8 must map before any entry argument can be made responsibly. The machinery starts with the 5 giants. Chapter 2, the Points Superpower. Every market in this series has a points landscape. Japan has a points civilization, and the difference is not rhetorical. It is measurable, structural, and old. Count the membership roles of the 5 common points programs, the cross-merchant currencies that sit above individual store schemes. V-Point, created in April 2024 when Sumitomo Mitsui's card points absorbed the venerable T-Point, the program that invented the category 2 decades ago with a video rental card, counts roughly 150 million members. Ponta, the convenience store coalition anchored at Lawson, has about 110 million accounts. Rakuten Points and Docomo's D-Point each sit around 100 million. PayPay Points, the youngest, exceeds 63 million. On the back of the payment war, SoftBank spent billions winning. 5 programs, each with membership rolls approaching or exceeding the population of Japan itself. Add them up, roughly 520 million loyalty accounts in a country of 124 million people. Duplication explains the arithmetic. Nearly every adult carries several, but the duplication is the point. In the usage surveys, 59.3% of Japanese consumers actively use Rakuten Points. Nearly half use T-Point before the merger. 4 in 10 use Ponta. Almost as many use D-Point and PayPay. Stack those, and the average Japanese consumer is an active user of 2 to 3 point currencies simultaneously, choosing which to present at the convenience store till the way a trader chooses a settlement currency. There is no points-aware segment in Japan to address, no education budget to spend, no behavior to teach. Points are not a product category here. They are a layer of the retail price system, as ordinary as tax, printed on every receipt, asked about at every register. To feel what this means at street level, walk one transaction. A Tokyo office worker buys lunch at a convenience store. They present a Ponta card for the store's points, pay with a card that earns V points, and the payment app underneath drips PayPay points on top. 3 currencies earned in one 900 yen purchase, none of them requiring a decision, all of them expected. Now multiply that by every register in the country, every day, for 20 years. That is the depth of habit any newcomer walks into. The good news for a foreign entrant: no Japanese consumer needs the concept explained. The sobering news: the concept's explanation was the easy part everywhere else. In Japan, the entire pitch has to happen after the words, points from shopping, because those words are wallpaper here. 3 features of this system matter for everything that follows. First, the giants are conglomerate weapons, not standalone businesses. Rakuten points exist to bind users into Rakuten's e-commerce, banking, mobile, and travel ecosystem. Rakuten Akiba alone holds roughly 27% of Japanese e-commerce, and Chapter 7 gives its multiplier machine a full audit. D-Point defends Docomo's mobile base against churn. Ponta defends KDDI's and Lawson's. PayPay drives SoftBank's payments flywheel toward its bank. V-Point now anchors Sumitomo Mitsui's card empire. Every giant is someone's moat, funded not by loyalty economics, but by the parent's customer lifetime arithmetic. Which is why none of them needs an outside partner the way Velocity needed one in Australia or Starlux in Taiwan. This series' anchor doctrine, find the counterparty who needs you, runs into 5 counterparties who need nobody. Second, the currencies interconnect, with each other and with the airlines. At published rates every serious user can quote. Points move between programs, into and out of card schemes, and up into ANA and JAL miles through conversion paths whose rates are tabulated on comparison sites and updated the day they change. This is what Korea's ladder looked like, but wider, older, and liquid in both directions. Japan effectively runs an internal foreign exchange market for loyalty value. The world's most liquid points economy, with the airline mile as its reserve currency. And Chapter 5 will show that its pricing is efficient enough to have spawned a profession of route arbitrageurs and a literature of rate tables that functions as the market's financial press. Third, and this is the feature that distinguishes Japan from every prior volume, the airline mile sits at the top of this hierarchy, not outside it. In Korea, the one-pegged point was the native currency, and the mile an awkward guessed nobody priced generously. In Japan, the JAL and ANA mile is the acknowledged premium asset of the entire system. The thing the common points aspire to become. The conversion routes all point upward toward the airlines. The ground miler culture exists precisely because the mile is understood, by tens of millions of people, as received wisdom to be worth more than the point. A market that already believes miles beat points is a market where HeyMax's core sermon is already preached. By everyone, constantly, in Japanese. No other market in this series required zero evangelism. Japan requires zero evangelism and maximum competition, and that trade is what this whole volume is about. A brief word on how this system came to exist, because the history explains the structure. Japan's common points were born from retail, not aviation. T-Point started as a video rental loyalty card in 2003 and grew by federating merchants who could not afford their own programs. The telcos then bought or built their way in, Docomo converting its handset discount budget into D-Point, KDDI backing Ponta, because a point currency was cheaper than a price war. Rakuten built its points as marketplace glue, and the banks arrived last, with Sumitomo Mitsui absorbing T-Point into V-Point to feed its card business. 4 industries, retail, telecoms, e-commerce, banking, each independently concluded that a point currency was the cheapest weapon in its own war. None of them was ever trying to build a travel program, which is why, at the summit of all of it, the airline mile kept its throne. The one currency in the country that buys something no conglomerate can print: a seat. Now the regulatory frame, because it is friendlier than any in the series except Taiwan's, and the friendliness is load-bearing. Japan's Payment Services Act regulates prepaid instruments, balances bought with money. The regime is serious. Issuers of paid points must register, disclose, and deposit half the outstanding unused balance with the authorities as consumer protection. A genuine compliance apparatus with genuine cost. But points issued free, as a bonus on purchases, fall outside the regime entirely. No consideration paid, no prepaid instrument, no registration, no deposit. The statutory logic is clean. If the consumer paid nothing for the balance, there is nothing to protect. And it is precisely max miles structure. Miles earned from shopping are gratis in the statute's sense. The affiliate commission that funds them is a business cost, not consumer consideration. The carve-out that Taiwan published in an interpretive letter, and Korea conspicuously lacked, exists here in the primary statute, tested by 2 decades of the domestic points industry operating at civilizational scale on exactly this exemption. The familiar caveat travels with the series, sharpened by the market. HeyMax First, the subscription that delivers miles now against money paid now, is the one product in the portfolio that reads like consideration for value. And in Japan, that reading collides with a real registration and deposit regime rather than a hypothetical one. There is an exemption for balances that expire within 6 months, but using it would gut the product. This volume flags the question in Chapter 13, prices it in Chapter 19's prohibitions, and does not attempt to settle it. That is what Japanese counsel is for. The load-bearing point stands. The core model, earn free, transfer free, walks into Japan's statute through a door the statute itself holds open. So the ground so far, a depressed outbound market wrapped around the strongest inbound market in the world, and a point system of unmatched depth in which the mile is already king and the regulator is already comfortable. What should strike you is what has not appeared yet, any reason HeyMax is needed. 150 million V-Point members do not need a Singaporean startup to teach them loyalty. A market this liquid does not need another currency. A hierarchy this settled does not need another rung. The gap in this market, if one exists, must be something structural the giants cannot or will not do. Chapters 4 and 5 locate exactly that gap in the strange economics of the conversion routes. But first, the chapter this series always writes before it lets itself get excited. The one that killed Korea in 4 pages, the money underneath the cards. Chapter 3, the interchange that exists. This series has developed a ritual. Every market gets an interchange chapter, and the interchange chapter decides whether card-funded rewards can exist at all. The ritual has earned its place. Korea's answer was a statutory no, merchant fees legislated down to a fraction of a percent, recut on a political cycle, card-linked economics impossible. Australia's caps gutted a once-great rewards market and set the stage for the velocity dependency the Australia volume documented. Singapore's healthy 1.5% to 2% is, in a real sense, the reason HeyMax could be born there. The number is destiny. Japan's answer is the strangest in the series. Nobody will even tell you the number. In 2022, Japan's Fair Trade Commission published a market study of credit card transactions and made a finding that reads almost comic beside Korea's fee schedule legalism. None of the standard interchange rates in Japan are disclosed. More than 60 countries publish standard interchange fee rates. Japan does not. The card brands set them, the acquirers pass them through, the merchants pay them, and no one publishes them. The JFTC and the Trade Ministry have spent the years since nudging the international card brands toward publishing average rates, as part of a cashless expansion agenda whose stated obstacle is that Japanese merchant fees are high enough to keep small merchants cash only. Read that policy posture carefully, because it inverts Korea's. The Japanese state's complaint is not that rewards are too rich, it is that acceptance is too expensive, which is a complaint about the same pool of money from the opposite shore. High and uncapped. The available evidence, the study, the disclosure campaign, merchant advocacy, the acquirer price sheets that do circulate, points to typical merchant fees around 3%, with small merchants paying more and large ones negotiating down. I carry the precise figure as an estimate because that is the point. In Japan, the true price of card acceptance is a negotiated secret, but the direction is unambiguous, and it is the opposite of Korea's. Japan's card economy still contains the pool of money that funds rewards. Plausibly, the largest such undisturbed pool in the developed world, sitting inside the developed world's second-largest card market. The consequences are visible across the market, and they look like the rewards ecosystems the capped countries lost. Japanese card rewards are generous by any developed market standard. 1% back is table stakes on free cards. Premium travel cards earn 1 to 1.5 miles per 100 yen. The co-brand ladder is deep. ANA and JAL each maintain sprawling card families across every major issuer, from free entry cards to premium tiers whose earn rates and bonuses would look familiar to an American reader and astonishing to an Australian one. Amex Japan runs a membership rewards program whose transfer table is the region's most interesting. 1-to-1 into ANA, the only major shopping currency anywhere that reaches ANA at par, a fact Chapter 15 returns to as a defensive wall, and 3-to-1 into JAL, improving to 2.5-to-1 with the paid enrollment tier. And the Point-Site economy of Chapter 4 pays card application bounties of 10,000 yen and up per approved card, which tells you issuer acquisition budgets are real, flowing, and already routed through exactly the affiliate rails HeyMax monetizes elsewhere. It is worth pausing on why Japan, alone among rich countries, never had its interchange fight. Part of the answer is cash. Japan ran on physical currency deeper and longer than any peer economy. Card acceptance was historically a big city, big merchant affair, so the fees never touched enough small businesses to become a political cause. Part of the answer is structure. The issuing side and the acquiring side of Japanese cards grew up inside the same industrial groups, so the fee was an internal transfer more than a battleground. And part is simple queue position. The regulators spent the last decade on the payments war between the QR wallets, and the card fee question only reached the front of the line when the cashless campaign made acceptance costs a policy obstacle. The fight is coming. It has simply not happened yet, and a rewards platform's planning horizon fits inside that yet. For HeyMax specifically, the Interchange chapter carries 3 implications in ascending order of discomfort. First, the model is not structurally excluded. This is not Korea, and the difference is worth stating flatly, because Korea is the volume this one will be compared against. A card-linked earn layer, an issuer partnership, a co-brand, all of these are economically possible in Japan because the pool exists and nobody has legislated it away. Whether they are commercially available to a 30-person foreign startup is a different question. But the answer is not predetermined by statute, and in this series, that alone puts Japan in the upper half of markets examined. Second, HeyMax's actual card asset does not travel here yet. Card Maximizer, the product the roadmap volume judged HeyMax's most defensible engineering, runs on the Visa offers platform and supports Singapore-issued cards with a separate Hong Kong rollout. A Japanese version means Japanese issuer coverage. A Japanese card terms database, built and maintained in Japanese, against issuer documentation written in JCB-era conventions. And a network relationship in a market where the politics run through JCB, the domestic card scheme this series has never had to think about before, which sits in roughly a fifth of Japanese wallets and has no card-linked offers platform for a foreign startup to plug into. None of that is impossible. All of it is work that has not begun, by a company that has never posted a Japanese engineering role. That sentence will recur in Chapter 11 with the full inventory around it. Third, the subtle one, and the one that separates Japan from every easy reading, high uncapped interchange cuts both ways for an affiliate first entrant. The pool funds the incumbents too. Japan's card issuers can afford rich rewards, so the consumer's baseline is already high. The free ANA card already earns. The convenience store already discounts. The point sites already pay bounties. In Korea, the problem was that nobody could pay. In Japan, everybody can pay, so everybody does, and a shopping layer must feel additive on top of a stack that is already tall. The stacking argument, HeyMax on top of your card, not instead of it, still works arithmetically, exactly as it did in Singapore. It just stacks on top of a taller stack, for an audience that already counts its layers. And a note on the card, ladder's top rung, because it defines the competitive ceiling for any earn proposition. The serious Japanese travel card user is not earning 1%. A premium JAL or ANA co-brand, with its bonuses and category multipliers, can clear 1.5 miles per 100 yen on the right spend. The Amex portfolio adds transfer flexibility on top, which means a shopping layer pitching Japanese cardholders is not competing against an empty wallet, it is competing against some of the best card economics in the world, and its honest pitch is the same one that worked in Singapore. Stack, don't switch. Keep your co-brand. Route the spend through the portal first. The two earn events compound. That pitch survives arithmetic scrutiny in Japan precisely because Interchange funds both layers at once, which is the quiet, load-bearing gift of this chapter's finding. One regulatory weather note before moving on, because this series has now watched 3 governments discover merchant fees, and the pattern deserves respect. The transparency campaign is the early stage of the same movie Korea and Australia already finished. State attention to merchant fees rarely reverses, and disclosure is historically the first act before caps. If Japan eventually publishes, then caps, interchange, plausibly years away, possibly never, given the trade ministry's competing desire for cashless expansion, the pool shrinks, and this chapter's cheerful conclusion shrinks with it. For the entry horizon this volume considers, the pool is there. I flag the trend line because pretending regulatory, whether is climate, has cost this series subjects before. And because Chapter 14 books a specific opportunity, a card-linked layer in a post-disclosure Japan, against exactly this uncertainty. The money exists. That is the chapter's finding, and in this series it is never a small one. But the question Japan actually poses lies one level up, where that money already gets converted into miles at industrial scale, by the strangest consumer machine this series has met. Operated not by a company, but by a population. Chapter 4, The Ground Milers. Somewhere in Japan tonight, a salaried office worker who has not boarded an aircraft this year will finish a routine that adds several thousand JAL miles to a balance already past 6 figures. The routine involved no flight, no co-brand card spend of note, no premium purchase. It involved a point site, a conversion route, and a discipline that has a name, a literature, and a community measured in the millions. The word is rikumera, ground miler, and it is the single most important fact about the Japanese market for a company like HeyMax, because it means the behavior HeyMax sells is not merely present in Japan. It is industrialized, named, and old enough to have a history with eras in it. Understand the machine's parts from the bottom up. At the base sit the point sites, poikatsu portals like Moppy, operated by Series, a company listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, and Hapitas, which are shop-through affiliate platforms of exactly the shape this series knows from every market. Click through to Rakuten Akiba or Yahoo Shopping and earn roughly 1% back in site points. Take a credit card application and earn bounties of 10,000 yen and up. Complete offers, surveys, insurance consultations, brokerage signups for hundreds or thousands of points each. This is Shopback's model, HeyMax's earn layer, Korea's AppTech. Japan simply built it earlier and bigger, and the sites are mainstream brands 2 decades old. advertised on television, discussed in weekly magazines, operated by listed companies with investor relations decks. At the top sit the airline miles, the premium currency Chapter 2 established as the system's summit. And between the two run the routes. A route is a published chain of conversions from site points through intermediate currencies into ANA or JAL miles. And the route table is the community's sacred text, updated in real time on the blogs and annually in printed guides. The canonical numbers as of this research, August 2026. Moppy converts into JAL miles at a base rate of 50%. Moppy's recurring dream campaign turns 12,000 points into 6,000 JAL miles and then rebates 4,500 points back, an effective 80%, for members who earned 10,000 advertising category points that month and hold gold rank. Once per month, per member. And the August 2026 edition, running as this volume was researched, pushes the effective rate to 96%. Those three numbers, 50, 80, 96, are the domestic price of a JAL mile in shopping points. And hundreds of thousands of people can recite them the way a bond desk recites the yield curve. Read that against everything this series has measured. A Japanese consumer can convert ordinary shopping portal points into JAL miles at 96% this month, 80 in a normal campaign month, 50 as the floor, publicly, at scale, through a listed company's app. Korea's ladder ran at published rates with no spread left underneath and no optimizer class to care. Taiwan's fax machine friction preserved spread nobody could reach. Singapore's market had the spread and HeyMax took it. Japan's machine converts at scale, on the record, with campaign pricing. And the community treats the campaign calendar the way bond desks treat central bank meeting dates, planning conversion volumes months ahead, holding point inventory for the high-rate windows, publishing postmortems when a campaign's conditions tighten. On the ANA side, the machine is stranger, and the strangeness is instructive. The historic routes, the legendary Sorachika route through Tokyo Metro's card points, later the Mizuho route through the bank's points, have died one by one. Each closure a community trauma with its own commemorative literature. The 2026 table offers a fork that perfectly illustrates what this population is. The Nimoka route, at 70%, which requires physically operating a conversion kiosk attached to a Kyushu transit card. The machines exist only in Kyushu and one outpost in Hakodate. Or Moppy's direct ANA partnership at 33.3%, launched February 2026, instant, phone-based. People fly to Fukuoka to press the button. There are blog guides to the pilgrimage, which flights make it day-trippable, where the kiosks are, how many conversions to batch to amortize the airfare. That is not a joke about Japanese thoroughness. It is a measured fact about what a 37-point rate difference is worth to a practitioner converting 6 figures of points a year. And it is the purest demonstration anywhere in this series that conversion rate, not convenience, is what this population optimizes when the stakes are real. Now watch a practitioner run the machine for a month because the abstraction hides the discipline. Week 1. The routine shopping, groceries via the portal where possible, the phone bill, the streaming subscriptions, all clicked through for their 1%. Week 2. The bounty work, a new credit card application timed to a heightened offer, worth 15,000 points in one stroke. Logged in a spreadsheet that tracks annual card velocity so the credit file stays clean. Week 3, the ad point quota, the surveys, the app installs, the insurance consultation booked and endured, 10,000 points of advertising engagement to unlock gold tier campaign eligibility. Week 4, the conversion window, the dream campaign entry, 12,000 points pushed through at the month's best rate, the confirmation screenshotted for the blog. Repeat for a year, and the spreadsheet shows 200,000 miles. This is not couponing. It is a part-time job with a yield curve, and the person doing it is HeyMax's realistic first Japanese customer. Above the route sits a status economy the series has not seen elsewhere. The airline's elite tiers, JAL's JGC, ANA's SFC, are near-lifetime statuses unlocked by flying volume, and the community's term for earning them is shugyo, religious austerity training. A shugyo run is a mileage pilgrimage. Tokyo to Okinawa and back, repeatedly, sometimes in a weekend, flown purely to accumulate status credit. The existence of a word for this, and of seasonal shugyo fare guides, tells you the Japanese miles culture is practice-based rather than aspiration-based. It is a hobby with training regimes, not a marketing segment with conversion funnels. Communities like this cannot be advertised at, they can only be audited by and joined. Scale check, honestly labeled, because no census of ground milers exists. The observable proxies. Moppy alone claims north of 4 million members. The poikatsu guide economy sustains annual additions from mainstream publishers. The top strategy blogs document 200,000-mile annual hauls as an achievable target for a committed practitioner, and 300,000 plus for the obsessed. My estimate, labeled as such, is that serious route optimizers number in the high hundreds of thousands, inside a poikatsu-aware population of tens of millions. Whatever the exact figure, it dwarfs the optimizer class of every other market in the series combined. And it is the only such population with its own publishing industry. Now the 2 readings of this machine for HeyMax, and unlike previous volumes, both are live simultaneously. The dark reading, the job is taken. Japan does not need a foreign platform to convert shopping into miles. It has been doing so since before HeyMax's founders left school, at rates a startup cannot casually beat, through brands with 20 years of trust. Under a status economy, a foreigner cannot join by pressing release. Chapter 6 makes this case properly, with the incumbents given their full due. The bright reading hides inside the machine's one chronic disease, the one every part of this chapter has brushed against. The roots die. Sorachika died. Mizuho died. Rates get cut, campaigns grow conditions, the good exits require pilgrimages to Kyushu. The entire literature of the community is, at bottom, a literature of decay management, which roots survive. What this month's effective rate is, what to do before the next closure. A community that organizes its life around unstable conversion rates is a community for whom a permanently stable rate is a genuinely new product. HeyMax's rail into JAL is 1-to-1, uncapped by campaign conditions, no monthly windows, no gold rank prerequisites, no kiosk in Kyushu. Whether that stability can matter commercially, whether it can even be noticed, is the question chapters 13 and 14 price. What no reading disputes. This is the most points-literate population on the planet. They already believe what HeyMax preaches, and they audit rate tables for sport. Japan will not need convincing that shopping can become flying. Japan wrote the book, in annual editions, with rude obituaries. The obituaries deserve their own chapter, because the pattern of the deaths is the pattern of the opportunity. Chapter 5, The Roots and Their Decay. If Chapter 4 described the machine, this chapter reads its maintenance log. Because the single most consistent fact about Japanese mile routes is that they close. And the pattern of the closures, read carefully, is the sharpest strategic finding in this volume. The pattern predates every company in this book. The legendary Sorachika route, point sites, into Tokyo Metro's card points, into ANA miles at 90%, was for years the spine of the entire ANA ground miler economy, the route that made the hobby mass. Its closure announcements around 2018 produced the community's defining trauma, a literature of farewell posts, conversion deadline countdowns, and life after Sorachika guides that still structure how the community thinks. It was cut, mourned, and replaced by successors at lower rates. The Mizuho route, its heir at 70% through the bank's points, ended in its turn. The 2026 guides open by triaging its orphans. Today's ANA table offers the Namoka route at 70%, alive, the community understands, only because the physical kiosk requirement caps its volume, friction functioning as an actuarial moat, and Moppy's direct path at 33.3% for everyone unwilling to fly to Fukuoka for an exchange rate. 90, then 81, then 70 with a kiosk. Then 33, The ANA side of the market is a decade-long managed devaluation, executed one route closure at a time. JAL's side decayed differently, not by amputation, but by campaignization, and the difference matters for everything downstream. The base Moppy to JAL rate is 50%, and it has held, but the real rate lives inside the Dream campaign, which is not a rate but a conditional structure. Convert exactly 12,000 points into 6,000 miles. Receive 4,500 points back for an effective 80%, subject to earning 10,000 advertising category points that month, holding gold rank, once per month, per member. August 2026's edition sharpens the arithmetic to an effective 96. The effective yield requires a spreadsheet and monthly compliance. Miss a condition, the ad point quota short by a survey, the rank lapsed, and you took the 50. The Community's Guides Teach Dream campaign compliance the way tax guides teach deduction timing, and the failure modes are a standing genre of cautionary posts. And feel the closure from inside the community for a moment, because the emotional texture is strategic information. When a route dies, it dies with notice, a partner agreement termination announced weeks ahead, and the notice period becomes a festival of grief and logistics. The blogs publish conversion deadlines in bold. The forums fill with balanced triage, what to push through before the gate closes, what to strand, what the successor route pays. Veterans compare it to a bank run in slow motion, except the bank publishes the run's end date. And then the community does what it has always done. It re-optimizes, republishes, and quietly adds one more name to the list of rates that were promised by nobody and taken away on schedule. Ask what a decade of that does to a population's relationship with conversion rates. It does not make them cynical about miles, the hobby keeps growing. It makes them permanently, professionally alert to the difference between a rate that is operated and a rate that is guaranteed. No marketing message could teach that distinction. The incumbents taught it themselves, for free, for 10 years. Step back and name what this is, in the vocabulary this series has built across 9 volumes. Japan's conversion market prices the point-to-mile spread the way Korea's did, publicly, competitively, but with a crucial difference. The price is unstable by design. The platforms use rate volatility as a marketing instrument. Campaigns drive the monthly engagement spike. As a cost control valve, closures and caps bound the mile liability. And as a segmentation device, conditions sort the committed, who get 96, from the casual, who get 50. A price discrimination scheme any airline revenue manager would admire. Every player in the chain, Point-Site, intermediate currency, airline, retains the unilateral right to reprice, and exercises it regularly enough that the community's core competence is closure anticipation, reading partner agreement tea leaves, tracking which routes feel heavy, moving balances before announcements. 3 structural observations fall out of the log, each one load-bearing for the chapters ahead. First, the airlines tolerate the machine because they control its taps. ANA and JAL never sold these routes as promises. Every intermediate step is a partner agreement either side can end. And the history of closures is the history of that option being exercised whenever a route's mile outflow grew uncomfortable. The ground miler economy exists at the airline's pleasure. This is what an uncommitted anchor looks like, the precise inverse of a signed, marketed, mutually announced one-to-one transfer partnership. That contrast is the frame in which Chapter 10 will weigh HeyMax's rail. Second, the decay is asymmetric across the 2 airlines, and the asymmetry favors JAL's side of any new entrant story. ANA's routes have degraded harder and further, the 90-33 collapse, while JAL, through Moppy, still offers 80+ in campaign months and a stable 50 floor. The community's center of gravity has been migrating JAL-ward for years as a result. The strategy blogs that once taught Sorachika now teach Dream campaign compliance. A new one-to-one rail into JAL enters on the side where the audience already is, aimed at the airline whose ground miler franchise is ascendant. The mirror image, ANA's harsher decay making ANA's audience hungrier for exactly what HeyMax cannot offer them, is Chapter 15's problem. Third, and this is the finding I would underline twice, instability is the incumbent's chosen weakness. Not an accident. No domestic player offers a permanent, unconditional, published rate into a flag carrier. Not because they cannot. A listed company that wanted to guarantee 70% flat could price it, but because volatility serves them. Campaigns drive monthly active usage. Conditions drive rank chasing and ad point consumption. The point cites actual revenue. Closures cap liability. The entire market has optimized for the operator's flexibility at the cost of the user's certainty. And the users know it. Root closure anxiety is the community's background radiation. The reason the guides reissue annually, and the blogs maintain closure watch columns, which frames HeyMax's rail with a precision no other volume has managed. 1-to-1 into JAL Mileage Bank. No campaign window, no gold rank, no monthly cap, no kiosk. The rate is the rate, every day, published by both parties as a partnership rather than operated as a route. In a market whose native pathology is rate decay, HeyMax's product is not miles from shopping. Japan has that in industrial abundance. The product is rate stability, and Japan has never been offered it. That sentence is this volume's thesis. Everything after it is the audit of whether the thesis survives contact with the incumbents, the economics, and HeyMax's own record. The honest caveats immediately, because a thesis stated without them is a pitch. A stable rate matters only if the effective yield competes. Chapter 13 does that arithmetic against the 50-80-96 table, and campaign months are formidable. Stability is itself a promise. And this series documented HeyMax suspending its own transfer rails for 14 months during the 2025 platform rebuild. The pitch survives only while the conduct does, and the Japanese community's memory for conduct is archival. And a rail's stability says nothing about the destinations. What JAL gives at 1-to-1, JAL's surcharge desk can take back in yen, which is precisely what happened in the same month the rail opened. Chapter 9's subject. But the strategic read stands, and it is the cleanest this series has produced. 9 volumes taught the doctrine that you do not enter a market by copying its incumbent strength. You enter on their chosen weakness. Korea's incumbents chose free cash, unbeatable, so the volume said no. Japan's incumbents chose volatility, and volatility has a natural predator, a fixed price. First, though, meet the incumbents properly. They have been running this game for 20 years, and they are very, very good. Chapter 6, the Point-Site Incumbents. The companies that already do HeyMax's job in Japan deserve a chapter written with respect, because they are the most successful implementations of the shop-through-for-travel model anywhere in the world. And they did it first, by roughly 2 decades. Moppy is the reference case, and its profile is worth dwelling on, because it is what HeyMax would look like after 20 years of Japanese iteration. Operated by series, listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, Moppy claims membership north of 4 million and sits at the center of the JAL groundmiler economy. Its mechanics are HeyMax's mechanics, tuned by 2 decades. Shop-through affiliate earn at Rakuten Akiba, Yahoo Shopping, and thousands of merchants at roughly 1%. Card application bounties above 10,000 yen per approved card, sourced from the issuer acquisition budget's Chapter 3 measured. Offer walls, surveys, app install bounties, insurance consultation, and brokerage sign-up bounties running to 5 figures of points. A rank system whose gold tier gates the best conversion campaigns. And the JAL Dream campaign machine of Chapter 5, which functions simultaneously as its premium product, its retention engine, and its monthly engagement metronome. The ad points condition is the elegant part. To get the 80 or 96 rate, members must consume 10,000 points of advertising offers that month, which is to say, the best mile rate in Japan is priced in attention to Moppy's advertisers. The machine sells its users to its advertisers to fund the rate that retains its users. 20 years of iteration produces loops like that. And note what a listed parent means for the game being played. Series reports to the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Moppy's member growth, its advertising revenue, its campaign spending are lines in a public earnings deck, discussed on analyst calls. The JAL campaigns are not generosity, they are a customer acquisition budget with a disclosed payback model, tuned quarterly. That cuts two ways for a foreign challenger. It means the incumbent's aggression is bounded by shareholder arithmetic. Moppy will not burn margin indefinitely to defend a niche. But it also means the incumbent's staying power is bankable. This is not a startup that might fold, but a public company for which the Point-Site business is the core franchise, defended with public market patience. This series has faced venture-funded incumbents and conglomerate side projects. A profitable, listed, single franchise incumbent is a third kind of animal, the hardest kind to outspend and the easiest kind to outposition. Hapitas plays the same game with a shopping-heavier mix, its own conversion table, and a gentler brand aimed at the poikatsu curious rather than the root-obsessed. Around the two leaders orbit a dozen smaller sites, plus the comparison blogs that rank them all, the annual guidebooks that map their routes, and the YouTube explainer economy that onboards each year's newcomers. The Point-Site layer is not a company. It is an industry with its own trade press. Set the incumbent stack against HeyMax's 5 revenue lines from the company volume, and the overlap is nearly total. Merchant affiliate commission, the Point-Site's core, at domestic depth HeyMax cannot match. Card acquisition bounties, theirs, at scale, with issuer relationships a foreign entrant would spend years replicating. Offer wall and advertiser monetization, theirs, refined into the attention pricing loop. Travel vertical commissions, theirs, through the same global affiliate networks HeyMax uses. The only line without a Japanese incumbent twin is HeyMax First, the Miles Upfront membership, which is less a gap than a warning, since it is also the line that touches Japan's prepaid instrument law. Chapter 19 will argue it should stay home. 3 genuine structural advantages keep this from being a Korea-style closed door. They deserve precise statement because the whole entry case rests on them. The first is the destination asymmetry. The point sites do not issue the end currency. They buy access to it. Moppy's JAL rate is a wholesale arrangement Moppy funds. The 96% campaign is Moppy spending margin to buy JAL-bound loyalty. On commercial terms, JAL can revise and either side can end. Exactly the uncommitted anchor structure whose Decay Chapter 5 logged. HeyMax owns its currency outright and holds a signed, public one-to-one partnership with the same airline. Structurally, Moppy retails someone else's mile at a rate it must perpetually rebuy. HeyMax mints its own and has a treaty for the exchange. When routes wobble, and in Japan, routes always eventually wobble, the platform with the treaty holds the stabler ground. And the community that has memorized a decade of wobbles can see which platform that is. The second is the multi-destination gap. The point sites are domestically complete but internationally thin. Their conversion tables end at ANA, JAL, and the domestic point galaxy. A Japanese member with ambitions on Emirates metal, a Cathay first-class redemption, a Qatar Q-Suite, or a Flying Blue promotion has no domestic route at all. That member today goes through Marriott at 3-to-1 or gives up. HeyMax's roster of 24 programs, 16 airlines across every alliance, is not available from any Japanese point site at any rate. The optionality pitch that fell flat in single airline Korea has actual content in Japan, where the sophisticated audience knows exactly what Asia Miles or a Eurobonus sweet spot is worth and has no domestic way to reach one. It is a niche pitch. Most Ricumera want JAL and ANA, full stop. But it is a pitch with 0 competitors. Chapter 14 books it at its honest, modest size. The third is the yen-free arbitrage this series has never had available before. HeyMax does not need Japanese revenue to pay Japanese users. Max miles issued to a Japanese member for a Rakuten purchase are funded by the same global affiliate contracts that fund a Singaporean's miles. The ledger clears in the region, not the country. The point sites compete on domestic affiliate margins. HeyMax can, if it chooses, treat early Japanese earned generosity as regional customer acquisition, priced in Singapore dollars. That is not a sustainable moat, it is a war chest choice. but it means the incumbent scale does not automatically translate into a cost advantage on day one. In every other occupied market this series has examined, it did. Against those three advantages, the incumbents hold everything else, and the everything else is formidable. Brand trust measured in decades, listed company legitimacy in a market that checks corporate registries as consumer hygiene, 4 million member network effects, the campaign relationships with JAL itself, the entire Japanese language content ecosystem, from guidebooks to YouTube, and, decisive for the mass market, domestic identity. A Japanese consumer comparing Moppy, which their colleagues have used since university, run by a company on the stock exchange, against a Singapore app with no Japanese interface, is not running a rate comparison. They are running a trust comparison, and trust comparisons in Japan default domestic. And one more asymmetry cuts the other way entirely. It is the one I would circle in red before any launch meeting. The point sites are diversified across earn categories HeyMax does not touch: the offer walls, the surveys, the insurance consultations, the brokerage bounties. These generate the bulk of a serious ground miler's point income. Card bounties and offers, not 1% shopping, are how you reach 200,000 miles a year. And they also generate the 10,000 monthly add points the dream campaign requires. A ground miler cannot run their Moppy playbook on HeyMax. Because HeyMax's earn surface in Japan, on day one, would be a fraction of Moppy's. The stable rail matters only to someone with points to push through it, and the incumbents own the machinery that generates the points. So the field chapter ends where the Korea field chapter ended. The job is occupied, but with a different valence, and the difference is the volume's hinge. Korea's occupier gave the product away free, funded by a super app, unassailable. The volume said no. Japan's occupiers charge for it, through volatility. They monetize the same rails HeyMax monetizes. And they leave two doors visibly ajar: the stable treaty rate they have chosen not to offer, and the world beyond ANA and JAL they have chosen not to serve. Whether those two doors are big enough to walk a business through is the economics chapter's problem. This volume will not pretend the answer is obvious. Before that, the giant that isn't a point site at all and bends every trajectory in the market around its mass. Chapter 7, Rakuten's Gravity. No analysis of Japanese loyalty survives contact with Rakuten. So let me state its mass precisely, and then explain why this volume roots around it rather than through it, a decision that shapes everything in the back half of the book. The mass, first, in the numbers that matter. Rakuten Ichiba holds roughly 27% of Japanese e-commerce, the largest single share, ahead of Amazon Japan on most measurements that include the full marketplace. Rakuten points are used by 59.3% of Japanese consumers, the highest penetration of any program in the country, the default answer to the question, which points do you collect? About 100 million members. The points issue at a baseline of 1% on the marketplace and spend like yen across the empire. The marketplace, the travel agency, the bank, the securities arm, the mobile network, the card. And the binding mechanism, SPU, Super Point Up, Rakuten Stacking Multiplier, is the most sophisticated loyalty machine ever deployed at scale. Your base earn on the marketplace rises with each Rakuten service you adopt. Hold the Rakuten card, more. Bank at Rakuten Bank with the card's charges rooted there, more. Carry Rakuten Mobile, more still. Buy the insurance, hold the securities account, book the travel, the multiplier climbs, until a fully committed household earns double-digit percentages back on marketplace spend, denominated in points that spend like cash across the whole lattice. SPU is not a rewards program. It is a household capture machine that pays you in proportion to how much of your financial life you surrender to one conglomerate. And tens of millions of Japanese households have run the arithmetic and surrendered. SPU is why Rakuten is not a competitor in HeyMax's category so much as the weather system above it. 3 consequences follow, and they run from comfort to warning. First, Rakuten already won the cashback war that Korea's Naver won, but left the miles flank open. And the openness is structural, not accidental. Rakuten points are yen-adjacent, spendable everywhere in the ecosystem, mass market perfect. But Rakuten's aviation story is thin, no airline of its own. A points-to-ANA conversion at an unremarkable rate that no optimizer celebrates. No premium cabin narrative at all. This is by design. Rakuten optimizes for keeping value inside the empire. Every point redeemed on the marketplace is margin recaptured. Every point converted to ANA is value exported. The mile is an exit, and empires do not market their exits. The ground milers of Chapter 4 are, in a precise sense, people who defected from SPU maximization to mile maximization. They shop through Akiba via point sites, harvesting Rakuten's affiliate, spend into a currency Rakuten does not control. Running an extraction strategy against the empire from inside its own mall. HeyMax's entire Japanese proposition lives on that same defector's path, one rung further out. Rakuten spend, external currency, airline destination. Second, Rakuten is HeyMax's largest potential merchant in Japan, not its rival. And the distinction is operational, not rhetorical. The point sites member earn on Akiba routes through Rakuten's affiliate program, the same publicly joinable program any platform can contract into, the same way Moppy did 20 years ago. HeyMax's Japanese earned surface on day one is, to a first approximation, Akiba plus Yahoo Shopping plus the global travel merchants. Which is to say, the gravity well is also the harvest. There is a precedent in HeyMax's own portfolio. In Singapore, the platform earns on Amazon and Shopee without either giant noticing or caring, because a rewards layer that drives incremental checkout is just another affiliate. The realistic Rakuten relationship is exactly that, anonymous, contractual, merchant side. And the realistic Rakuten risk is not retaliation, but indifference. Affiliate commission terms on Akiba are set by Rakuten, revisable by Rakuten, and were built to feed domestic point sites at the 1% tier, not to fund a foreign platform's mile issuance at Singapore-calibrated rates. Chapter 13's arithmetic must survive Rakuten's commission schedule, not the other way around. Third, the SPU lesson generalizes into the sharpest warning this chapter can issue. In Japan, loyalty is won by systems, not rates. SPU's genius is not generosity, it is entanglement. The Japanese consumer's loyalty stack is a lattice of rank systems, monthly conditions, and ecosystem multipliers. Rakuten's SPU, Moppy's gold tier, the Dream campaign's ad point quota, the airline's status ladders. And every domestic player competes by adding lattice, because lattice is what retains. A foreign entrant offering a simple proposition, one rate, no ranks, no campaigns, no multipliers, is making a contrarian bet that some segment is exhausted by lattice and will pay for its absence. The evidence that the segment exists is real, but bounded. The guides increasingly sell simple routes and no-fuss strategies to an audience tired of compliance spreadsheets. Moppy itself launched the 33% direct ANA path, a worse rate with zero conditions, precisely because the kiosk pilgrimage was a lattice too far for most members. The burn fast, keep it simple school of the surcharge era is ascendant. Simplicity has a market share in Japan. It is not the majority share, and no pricing of HeyMax's Wedge should assume otherwise. One more Rakuten fact deserves its own paragraph, because it is the cautionary tale hiding inside the opportunity. Rakuten itself once ran the play HeyMax would run. Rakuten's overseas cashback arm, the old Ebates business, was exactly a shop-through rewards layer, and Rakuten wound down its presence in market after market outside the American core. The company that best understands Japanese loyalty concluded that foreign shop-through platforms are hard, low-margin, incumbent-bound businesses everywhere except home. Read from Tokyo, that is a warning about the model. Read from Singapore, it is also a comfort. The giants think about this category as a cash business and exited it where cash margins thinned. None of them ever ran it as a miles business with an owned currency and an airline treaty, the configuration whose economics Chapter 13 prices. The category Rakuten abandoned is not the category HeyMax runs. But the abandonment is the reason the field is empty, and empty fields deserve suspicion before they deserve celebration. A word on the rest of the giant class, briefly, because the pattern repeats with the serial numbers changed. D-Point defends Docomo's mobile base. Ponta defends KDDI's and Lawson's. V-Point anchors Sumitomo Mitsui's cards. PayPay drives SoftBank's payments-to-banking flywheel. Each converts toward the airlines at middling rates. None needs a foreign partner. None will anchor a Singaporean startup, for the same reason Korea's conglomerate coalitions would not. Every one of them already is somebody's loyalty strategy, run at conglomerate scale for conglomerate ends. The realistic relationship with all five giants is the one HeyMax has with comparable giants elsewhere, none or merchant side only. The partnership ledger of Chapter 17 will file them under closed, and the plan of Chapter 18 will be built on never needing them, which completes a field picture unlike any prior volume, worth freezing in one frame before the plumbing chapter finishes the ground. Above, 5 conglomerate currencies. Closed, self-sufficient, owning the mass market through entanglement. Between, point sites running HeyMax's exact model, domestically perfected, monetizing the same rails. At the summit, 2 airline currencies, one of which HeyMax already taps, at a treaty rate the domestic market cannot match for stability. The market has no vacancy where HeyMax's whole model fits, and one narrow, well-lit doorway where its rail does. The last piece of the field is the plumbing everyone in this chapter stands on, the affiliate networks themselves, and the $500 billion yen that flows through them. Chapter 8, the affiliate rails. Underneath every point site, route, and campaign in the last 4 chapters runs the plumbing this series always audits before recommending anything. Who pays commission? Through what networks? At what depth? On what terms? The audit matters because affiliate commission is the fuel of HeyMax's entire model, the money that becomes miles, and a market can look magnificent above ground while the pipes below run dry. Korea's did. Japan's answer is the healthiest in the series. Start with scale. The Japanese affiliate industry generates upward of 500 billion yen a year, the world's largest affiliate market outside the United States. And it runs on a domestic network stack that predates most Western equivalents, built in the early 2000s alongside the first point sites and matured with them. A8.net, operated by Fan Communications, listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, is the spine. More than 3 million registered affiliates. Over 22,000 advertiser programs, from megabrands to prefecture-level specialty stores. Around it, Value Commerce, the Yahoo-adjacent network. Mishimo, the blogger-friendly upstart. And the global networks, carrying the international travel and e-commerce merchants into Japan. Every point site in Chapter 6 is, mechanically, a member-facing skin over this stack, arbitraging network commissions into member points. So is HeyMax everywhere it operates. The machinery is identical. Only the skin and the currency differ. 3 findings matter, in descending order of certainty. First, the commission depth is real, and the travel vertical is its richest seam, as it has been in every market this series has measured, without exception. The domestic e-commerce baseline runs 1 to 2% gross. The point sites rebate about 1% on Akiba and Yahoo Shopping, and a rebate of 1 implies a gross comfortably above it, with the network and the portal each taking their cut. Thin, but liquid and vast. Travel pays multiples more. The same global inventory HeyMax already monetizes, Klook, Agoda, Trip.com, the hotel programs, the activities platforms, pays the same 10 to 25% commissions on Japanese bookings as on Singaporean ones. Often through the same regional contracts. Frequently with the same account managers. This is the finding that makes Chapter 1's corridor thesis an operating business rather than a strategy slide. HeyMax's largest Japanese revenue line exists today, serving inbound travelers to Japan, on contracts already signed, at margins the domestic e-commerce baseline cannot approach. Second, the cashback category is growing, not saturating, and its most instructive feature is who is absent. Japan's cashback programs market was estimated at about $14.8 billion in 2023, forecast to reach $30.2 billion by 2029, a growth rate in the low to mid-teens. Remarkable for a mature retail economy and evidence that the poikatsu culture is still recruiting. This growth is happening without Shopback, the region's best-funded cashback operator, present in every other market this series has covered, aggressive everywhere from Taiwan to the Gulf, never opened a Japanese consumer portal. The category leaders are entirely domestic. The absence deserves a moment of respect because Shopback's calculus is the closest available proxy for HeyMax's, a Singapore-headquartered platform, affiliate-funded, weighing the same localization costs against the same incumbent wall. Shopback looked at the world's fourth-largest e-commerce market and stayed out. Whether that was Rakuten fear, localization cost, or Point-Site incumbency, the one piece of comfort for this volume is this. Shopback's economics, cash rebates, no own currency, no spread, are exactly the model the Point-Sites already saturate. A cashback clone has no wedge in Japan. The incumbents are the cashback clone, perfected. HeyMax's economics, owned currency, treaty rail, multi-alliance destinations are not the saturated model. That is not proof the wedge works. It is proof the wedge is at least not the thing that already failed the region's shrewdest operator by inspection. A practical note on what onboarding those rails actually involves, because the plan in Chapter 18 depends on the answer being boring. Joining a Japanese affiliate network as a publisher is paperwork, not politics. An application, a media review, a bank account for settlement. The networks exist to say yes, every new publisher is inventory for their advertisers. The friction lives one level up, in the advertiser-by-advertiser approvals. Each program owner decides which publishers may carry its offers, and Japanese advertisers are conservative about foreign media. Expect the global names and the travel merchants to approve fast. Many already know HeyMax from regional contracts. Expect the domestic long tail to approve slowly, watch traffic quality for a quarter, and warm up, which yields a predictable earned surface curve, strong in travel and cross-border from day one, thin domestically at launch, thickening monthly. The mistake would be reading the day one thinness as failure. The curve is the curve. Every point site climbed at once. Third, the regulatory posture on this layer is light and stable, rounding out the friendliest legal picture in the series after Taiwan. Affiliate marketing in Japan is governed by the stealth marketing rules added to the advertising law in October 2023. Paid promotion must be disclosed as advertising, a duty familiar from every market and already built into HeyMax's disclosure practices. On the reward side, the gratis points carve out of Chapter 2. No licensing wall for the affiliate business. No Korean-style statutory fee compression. No Australian-style interchange trauma upstream. The one watch item is the one Chapter 3 flagged, the Trade Ministry's Interchange Transparency Campaign, which touches the card layer, not the affiliate layer, and moves on a horizon measured in years. The rails are open to anyone who signs the contracts, and the contracts are signed at desks, not ministries. Put the field together, Chapters 6 through 8, and Japan's structure is now fully mapped. In 4 layers the rest of this volume will keep returning to. The demand side is proven at civilizational scale. The most points-literate consumers on Earth, pre-sold on the Miles thesis, organized into a community that audits rates weekly and publishes the audits. The supply side is open. Uncapped interchange funding the richest card economy in the region. 500 billion yen of annual affiliate flow, travel commissions on contracts HeyMax already holds, and a statute whose gratis points door stands open. The middle is occupied. Point sites executing HeyMax's model with 20 years of trust and a diversified earned surface HeyMax cannot replicate. Underneath conglomerate currencies that own the mass market through entanglement. And the one structural novelty HeyMax brings, a treaty-stable, one-to-one, multi-alliance transfer layer, addresses the documented chronic pain of exactly the community most capable of noticing. Root decay on the conversion side. Destination poverty on the redemption side. That is a real strategic geometry. Sharper than Taiwan's, incomparably better than Korea's, and more contested than Singapore's ever was. Before pricing it, the volume must cross the event that reshaped every number in it 4 weeks before this research began, on the day before the rail opened, the toll booth. Chapter 9, The Surcharge Shock. On the 1st of July, 2026, the day before HeyMax's JAL rail went live, with a symmetry no novelist would risk, the price of actually using a JAL mile jumped again. This chapter prices the jump, because every number in the back half of this book moves with it. The mechanism is the fuel surcharge, and Japan's 2 flag carriers run the most aggressive surcharge regime in world aviation, a fact underappreciated outside Japan, because most Western programs buried or abolished surcharges years ago. JAL and ANA levy them per flight sector, scaled by distance, revised every 2 months against a fuel price index. And the sentence that matters for this book, they apply them to award tickets. A free flight on miles has never been free in Japan. Through 2026, it became startlingly expensive. The carriers raised international surcharges repeatedly across the year, roughly doubling them. For tickets issued in July and August 2026, a one-way Japan to North America or Japan to Europe itinerary carries a surcharge of 65,000 yen, about $400, up 9,000 yen from June alone. Round trip, 130,000 yen, before airport taxes and fees. That is the toll on the aspirational redemption, the West Coast trip, the Paris trip, that the entire ground miler machine points toward. Do the arithmetic the community's blogs did within days, because it is brutal. The classic JMB economy award to North America, the 50 to 60,000 mile round trip that a diligent dream campaign practitioner could assemble in a year of routing, has become 60,000 miles, plus 130,000 yen in cash. At 2026 economy fares, the cash component alone approaches what a discounted paid ticket sometimes costs in the sales. The miles, on the margin, are buying almost nothing. The premium cabin still clear, a business class award surcharge is the same 130,000 yen against a cash fare 10 times that, so the miles value concentrates violently up cabin. But the mass market long-haul award, the one ordinary members save toward for years, has been priced into absurdity. The community's verdict was immediate and is now consensus. Long-haul economy awards on the home carriers are dead money. Redeem premium, redeem regional, or hold cash. Understand also why the carriers can do this without a revolt, because the mechanism is instructive. The surcharge is presented as an index, not a price, a formula tied to jet fuel markets, revised on a published schedule, wearing the costume of arithmetic neutrality. Nobody at JAL decided to charge you 65,000 yen, the formula did. The community understands perfectly well that the formula's coefficients are choices. Other airlines fly the same fuel at a fraction of the surcharge, but the index framing diffuses the anger that a naked price rise would concentrate. And it sets a precedent this book must carry forward. Both flag carriers have demonstrated, repeatedly, that the published cost of redemption can double inside a year through a mechanism that requires no devaluation announcement, no chart change, and no apology. Any valuation of a JAL mile that does not carry that demonstrated capability as a standing risk is not a valuation. It is a hope. Fold in the second squeeze, quieter but documented, and note the cause: award availability. Through 2026, JAL Mileage Bank accumulated new international feeder programs at unprecedented speed. Built in the United States. Rove, HeyMax, and by mid-year, the community reporting was unambiguous that partner award space had thinned badly. More currencies chasing seats JAL never expanded. The oldest story in loyalty economics, arriving in the same quarter as the toll. And note, HeyMax's rail is, in the community's accounting, part of the cause of the squeeze. A detailed Chapter 12's reception analysis should not forget, because the Japanese blogs will not. What do the two squeezes do to this volume's thesis? 3 things, each double-edged, each worth separating cleanly. First, they cut the naive value of the rail. A one-to-one transfer into a mile whose flagship redemption carries an $800 round-trip toll is worth materially less than the same rail a year earlier. Any entry arithmetic that prices a JAL mile at its 2024 value is wrong. Chapter 13 will not make that mistake. Its yen per mile comparisons hold only net of the toll, and the toll favors nobody. Second, the edge that cuts the other way, and the chapter's central finding, the surcharge regime regionalizes the mile's value. And the region is where HeyMax lives. Surcharges scale with distance. The short-haul bands covering Japan to Taiwan, Japan to Korea, and much of Southeast Asia carry tolls a small fraction of the long-haul figure. And JMB's distance-based partner chart remains one of the sweetest short-haul redemption tables anywhere in world loyalty. Domestic awards from 4,500 miles. Intra-Asia partner awards at rates American programs openly envy. Generous routing rules the community has optimized for a decade. The Surcharge Shock gutted the Tokyo to Paris dream and left the Tokyo to Taipei, Osaka to Seoul, and intra-Japan game nearly untouched, which means the mile has become a regional currency. And every corridor this series has mapped, every member HeyMax actually has, every inbound arrival Chapter 1 counted, lives in that region. The toll destroyed most of the value HeyMax's rail cannot reach and spared almost all of the value it can. That is luck, not strategy, but it is the kind of luck a strategy should notice. Third, the shock is a live demonstration of the series' oldest warning, running in real time, for the exact audience HeyMax would court. Chapter 5 argued HeyMax's product in Japan is rate stability. July 2026 taught every Japanese mileholder, again, that the rail's stability is only half the promise. The destination repriced instead. A community that watched its conversion routes Decay for a decade just watched the redemption side Decay too in the same summer, and drew its conclusions in public. The cynical conclusion, miles are a depreciating asset, hold none, circulates, and suppresses the whole game. The practitioner's conclusion, earn continuously, burn fast, prefer short haul, never hoard also circulates. And note carefully what it describes. A usage pattern of steady drip earning against frequent regional redemptions, rather than decade-long hoarding toward one devaluation-exposed jackpot. That pattern is exactly what a shopping earn layer with a stable rail provides. And exactly what the Dream campaign's monthly compliance, hoard and convert rhythm does not. The surcharge era's own best practice, as taught by the community's own guides, is structurally HeyMax-shaped. I will not pretend the shock net's positive. The honest ledger reads like this. Debit, the prize pool that makes the whole game worth playing, shrank, visibly, in every member's mental arithmetic. If the surcharge curve continues, and it has only ever risen, the Japanese miles appeal erodes toward its short-haul floor. Chapter 18's kill criteria stand armed on exactly that curve. Credit, the value that survived is regional, high-frequency, and stability-sensitive. 3 properties that describe HeyMax's actual shape better than they describe any incumbents. A market event neither party controlled has, on net, moved the game onto the board where HeyMax's pieces already stand. The toll is paid, the board is set, now the record. What exactly has HeyMax built for this market, and what has it not? The answer, for the first time in this series, begins with something real. Chapter 10, The Rail That Shipped. The record chapters of this series have all been autopsies of absence, enumerated sitemaps with 0 mentions, phone gates without prefixes, help center rosters without the flag carrier, careers pages without the country. The method has never changed. Measure the artifacts, ignore the press releases, price the gap. This one opens, for the first time in 10 volumes, with something that exists. On the 2nd of July, 2026, Japan Airlines Mileage Bank went live as a direct transfer partner of Max Miles, 1-to-1. Instant, 1,000-mile minimum for the first transfer, then increments of a single mile. No fee, announced by HeyMax. Documented by the community press the same week, the mechanics were written up within days. And listed in the Help Center's partner roster, where this series has audited every change for 5 volumes. I verified the listing myself during this research. The rail is real, live, and exactly as advertised. Weigh that against the series' own doctrine, because the doctrine is why this chapter matters more than its length. Rails precede promises. The Taiwan volume proved the pattern with the EV, a rail's timing fingerprint, infrastructure that appeared quietly, months before the market was ever named. Korea proved the contrapositive, a promise with no rail behind it, vanishing from the roadmap without ever leaving an artifact. This series has priced HeyMax's public commitments at approximately zero on the strength of those findings. Japan is the only market of the 5 named in HeyMax's expansion communications where the sequence ran to completion. Promised in January 2026 with a deadline, railed in July 2026 ahead of it. Whatever else this volume concludes, the record shows that when this company said Japan, it was describing work actually underway, which it has never once been able to show for Taiwan, for Australia after the retreat, or for Korea at all. One kept sequence does not redeem a promise-heavy communications culture, but it does force this volume to take the December deadline seriously as a plan rather than dismiss it as marketing. And that single shift in prior colors every chapter that follows. The rail's quality deserves scrutiny too, because not all partnerships are equal. This series has graded enough of them to have a rubric, and this one is better than it first appears, on 3 separate axes. It is a true treaty rate, and the domestic market cannot match it. 1-to-1 into JMB is a rate Japan's own machine cannot buy unconditionally at any point site. Moppy's base is 50%. Its best campaign, 96, with a spreadsheet of conditions attached. And Chapter 5 documented why the incumbents choose not to offer stability at any price. Even Japan's own premium ladder clears 1-to-1 into JAL nowhere. Amex Japan's membership rewards needs 3 points per mile, 2.5 with the paid tier. Marriott needs 3, softened by a bonus per large block. On the published tables, HeyMax's rail into JAL is, by rate, the single best shopping currency path into JAL Mileage Bank available in Japan. That sentence would be marketing if it were HeyMax's. It is arithmetic from the incumbent's own price lists. And Chapter 12's audit press will run the same arithmetic unprompted. It is bidirectionally useful, the first asset in this series that serves both of a volume's theses at once. Inbound. HeyMax's existing Singaporean, Hong Kong, and regional members transfer into JMB for its short-haul chart. The chart Chapter 9 showed surviving the Surcharge Shock and redeem on JAL metal to, from, and within Japan, the region's premier award destination. That works today with zero Japanese presence, and it deepens the corridor economics of Chapter 1 with every transfer. Domestic, prospectively, a Japanese member's route into their own flag carrier at an unconditional 1-to-1. The Wedge of Chapter 5. The same rail serves the corridor thesis and the entry thesis. No asset in any prior volume managed that. The EV, a rail served only the corridor. Hong Kong's operation served only the entry. And it slots into a JMB moment of maximum leverage, the Axis outsiders miss. JAL spent 2026 opening its program to foreign feeder currencies at a pace without precedent in its history. Built in the United States. Rove, HeyMax, inside a single year. An uncharacteristic promiscuity from a famously conservative program. The strategic read is not mysterious. Japan's national growth story is inbound tourism. JAL monetizes it by selling miles wholesale to platforms whose members fly to Japan. The program has decided that feeder currencies are a revenue line worth building. Whatever JAL's full motive, it means the counterparty wanted this class of partner, in a way Korean Air demonstrably did not, and EVA apparently barely did. The anchor question that decided every volume in this series, does anyone on the other side of the table need you? Has, in Japan, a documented yes, with 2 co-signatories proving the appetite is programmatic rather than personal. Dwell for a moment on what signing that partnership actually required, because the invisible work is the evidence. A direct transfer rail into a flag carrier's mileage program is not an API key. It is a commercial negotiation over mile pricing, HeyMax buys every mile it transfers at a wholesale rate that decides the economics of its entire Japanese proposition. It is a technical integration into a legacy airline loyalty stack, with reconciliation, fraud controls, and member matching across 2 identity systems. It is a brand permission negotiation. JAL's Crane does not appear in a foreign apps partner list without legal sign-off from a company famous for guarding it. And it is a risk decision inside JAL. Some committee in Tenazu weighed a 30-person Singaporean platform and said yes. 18 months of work, minimum, most of it on the airline's side of the table, none of it fakeable. That is why this series treats rails as the only honest signal. Press releases cost a morning. This cost a year and a half of 2 companies' attention. Now the limits of the record, stated with the same care, before the next chapter inventories everything missing around the rail. A rail is not an entry. The Taiwan Volumes EV a rail sat unexercised for over a year, while the market it implied never materialized. Its lesson holds, unweakened. Infrastructure without activation is an option, not a business. The JMB rail as it stands serves HeyMax's existing members. Its Japanese market meaning is entirely potential. Entirely dependent on the gate, the language, and the operation that Chapter 11 will show do not exist. The rail is single-sided. It moves max miles into JMB. There is no earnside presence in Japan. No Japanese sign-up path. No yen payout. No domestic merchant surface beyond the global affiliate contracts. No JAL flight earn. A Japanese ground miler cannot, today, even open the account that would let them use the best JAL rate in the country. The best transfer rate in Japan is currently a product no one in Japan can buy. That sentence is either a launch plan or an indictment. The record alone cannot say which. And one asymmetry the record cannot resolve, ANA. Half of Japan's mile economy, the half whose roots decayed hardest, where Chapter 5's stable rate pitch would land hardest, has no HeyMax relationship. And Amex Japan's exclusive 1-to-1 suggests ANA guards that gate deliberately and prices it high. The rail that shipped is real. But it is one rail into a 2-airline country, and the community it would court counts both airlines by reflex. That is the record's bright half. The strongest single asset in 10 volumes of this series, sitting exactly where the doctrine says value lives, signed by a counterparty with a documented appetite. The dark half is everything around it, and honesty requires counting that with the same precision. Chapter 11, everything else is missing. The rail shipped, nothing else did. This chapter is the inventory, run with the same production artifact methods every volume has used: storefront metadata, careers pages, schema audits, sitemap enumeration, on measurements taken the week of this research, the 9th of August, 2026. Every absence below is a measurement, not an inference. The front door is closed. HeyMax's sign-up gate remains a hard-coded map of 4 phone prefixes: Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, Indonesia. Japan's country code, +81, is not among them. This is the same gate audit this series ran for Taiwan and Korea with the same result. A Japanese resident cannot create the account that would let them touch the best JAL transfer rate in their country. And note what makes Japan's version of this finding stranger than Taiwan's. Taiwan's absent prefix sat alongside an unexercised rail nobody was promised. Japan's absent prefix sits alongside a rail the company announced, with a market entry deadline 4 months out. The single most important fact of the record: the rail exists behind a door Japanese consumers cannot open. The language has not moved. App version 6.5, checked across storefronts on the 9th of August, declares exactly one supported language. English, 3 years of operation, 2 live markets. A Hong Kong subsidiary acquired precisely to localize a market, a stated 4-market expansion, and not one localized build ever. For most of this series, that was a data point. For Japan, it is a wall. This is a market whose consumer internet, deal culture, Point-Site ecosystem, and airline programs operate overwhelmingly in Japanese, where the incumbent alternatives are all native, where the foreign apps that succeed, and the list is short, succeed by localizing completely. And the localization debt runs deeper than interface strings. The company volume identified the card terms database as HeyMax's true moat, thousands of hand-verified card benefit rules. The Japanese version of that moat would need building from zero. In Japanese, against issuer documentation written in JCB-era conventions, by staff who do not currently exist. The demand signal is 1. The Japanese App Store listing, a global distribution artifact, not a launch, has received a single rating in its lifetime. 1. Against Hong Kong's 20 at comparable audit dates and Singapore's steady accumulation, 1 rating is statistical silence. No expatriate community has adopted it. No Rikumera blogger has trialed it and told their readers. No organic Japanese user base waits behind the gate. When the gate opens, the counter starts at 0, in the market where public ratings archives matter most. The organization has not moved. The careers audit from the product strategy volume, 5 weeks before this research. 2 open roles, both Singapore-based, neither Japanese-speaking. 0 Japan-based roles ever posted in the company's hiring history. 0 engineering roles at all at the time of audit. Cross-check against the deadline, and the contradiction is arithmetic. The July release repeating Japan by end of 2026 was published by a company hiring nobody to do it. 5 months from the date. Localization, market operations, partnerships, support, the entry Chapter 18 will design needs a team. The team does not exist and is not being assembled in public. A CRIP-style acquisition, the Hong Kong playbook. Buy a local team and its market knowledge in 1 transaction, remains the only staffing story that could reconcile the deadline with the payroll. And no target, no transaction, and no rumor has surfaced in any artifact this research examined. The payments plumbing is absent. No Japanese yen payout method joins PayNow and Hong Kong's faster payment system. In the redemption schema, this series audits each volume. A Japanese member could transfer to JAL, but could not cash out a single yen. Card Maximizer and its Visa offers platform integration cover Singapore-issued cards with a Hong Kong extension. Chapter 3 already measured the JCB-shaped hole where a Japanese version would need to stand. Convenience store payment rails, pay integration, the entire Japanese checkout stack a localized earn experience would touch. Nothing, anywhere, in any artifact. And the marketing surface is bare. The 287-page published estate this series, audited for the Korea volume, mentioned Japan chiefly as a destination for Singaporeans. Itinerary content, corridor content, exactly what Chapter 1's inbound thesis would predict. There is no Japanese language content, no Japanese social presence. No Rikumera facing anything, no blogger outreach visible, no comparison site listing, no Japanese press release, even for the JAL rail itself, which the company announced in English to its existing markets. The community that audits conversion rates for sport has never been given a Japanese sentence to audit. For calibration, put the inventory beside the 1 entry this company actually executed, because the contrast is the measurement. Hong Kong, at the equivalent moment before its launch, looked nothing like this. The CRIP acquisition was announced, a local team in place with local knowledge. The payout rail existed, faster payment system integration, tested. The storefront presence built ahead of the gate. Marketing in market, partnerships in market, a country manager with a name and a face. That is what this company's footprint looks like when an entry is real and weeks away. Japan, 5 months from its deadline, shows none of those signatures. Not one. The comparison is not rhetorical. It is the closest thing this series has to a control experiment, and it is the reason the generous reading of what follows leans so heavily on an acquisition nobody has announced. Assemble the 2 record chapters into 1 statement, and Japan's strangeness is complete. In every prior volume, the record was internally consistent, whichever way it pointed. Promises without rails, Taiwan, Korea, all words, no wires, or rails with operations, Hong Kong. Wires, staff, storefront launch. Japan is the first split record in 10 volumes. The single hardest, slowest, most counterparty-dependent asset, fully built and live. And every supporting layer, every layer the company fully controls, the layers that take weeks rather than years, at absolute zero. A treaty-grade rail into the flag carrier, behind a phone gate that excludes the entire nation it serves. 2 readings fit the split. The volume will carry both to the verdict, rather than pretend the record picks one. The generous reading, sequencing. The rail was the asset with an 18-month lead time and a willing counterparty window that might not stay open. JAL was signing feeders in 2026, so you sign in 2026. The app gate, the language toggle, the payout rail are sprints a 30-person company runs in a quarter. On this reading, a company that ships the slow thing first and holds the fast things for a coordinated opening is behaving exactly rationally. And the Bare Careers page implies the coordination is an acquisition. Buy the team, flip the gate, launch dressed. This is what Japan by end of year looks like at month 7, if it is real. The cynical reading, the rail was never for Japan. It was for the corridor. For Singaporean and Hong Kong members transferring toward the region's best short-haul chart. Exactly like the EV, a rail before it, which also shipped without a market behind it, and still serves only outsiders. On this reading, Japan by end of year is Taiwan's promise wearing better evidence. The rail's Japanese market meaning stays at 0 indefinitely, and the December deadline, as it closes, forces either a public miss or the toggle launch gesture whose price Chapter 15 will set. The corridor revenue is real either way, which is precisely what makes the cynical reading comfortable enough to be true. The record cannot pick between them. A split record is split exactly because both readings survive it, but the readings are not equally priced, and the economics can narrow the range. Because if the domestic entry does not clear arithmetically, the cynical reading stops being a suspicion and becomes the correct strategy, and this volume would have to recommend it. That is Chapter 13's question. First, one chapter on the gauntlet any entry would face: how Japan receives what crosses the gate. Chapter 12, how Japan would receive it. Every volume asks how the market would greet an arrival. Japan's answer begins with a correction to this series' own habits. In Korea, the reception question was about hostility, a market primed by a super app's dominance and a nationalist consumer reflex to distrust a foreign points app on site. In Japan, the question is about attention. Because the reception machinery here is not skeptical so much as rigorous, and it is the most professionalized in the world. Japan will not be hostile to HeyMax. Japan will grade it, publicly, in permanent ink, and the grade will be earned. The evaluators are the Rikumera Press, the Groundmiler Media, and their structure is worth mapping because Chapter 16 will propose treating them as a channel. At the top, the veteran strategy blogs, a decade or more old. Names built on documented personal results, the 200,000-mile years with receipts. Route guides updated monthly. Verdicts that move community consensus. Independence as the asset, which is why they are not for hire. Beneath them, the poikatsu comparison industry. Commercial sites, some venture scale, that rank point sites in sortable tables, data verify every campaign's effective rate to the decimal, and earn affiliate commissions on the signups their rankings drive. Around both, the YouTube explainer economy that onboards each year's newcomers. The accounts that live post campaign launches within minutes. And the mainstream crossover, money magazines running poikatsu features, because a hobby with millions of practitioners is general interest content. This is not Korea's forum pricing an offer in an afternoon of arithmetic. It is a standing editorial industry whose entire product is conversion rate journalism, publishing on a weekly cadence, in a genre where a rate table is the article. What happens, mechanically, when a foreign platform with a one-to-one JAL rail becomes accessible to Japanese users? The genre's conventions make the coverage almost writable in advance, and writing it in advance is exactly what a competent entry team would do. The effective rate gets computed. Not the headline one-to-one, the yen of spend per JAL mile benchmarked against Moppy's campaign table. Exactly the arithmetic Chapter 13 performs. The conditions get audited. The 1,000-mile first transfer minimum, transfer timing, What happens when a merchant claws back? Where the balance lives if the company exits a market. The trust file gets compiled. Who is this company? Who backs it? Where is it regulated? With the Australia retreat one search away. The 14-month transferal suspension of 2025 documented, and this series' own volumes sitting in the record. Then a verdict lands in the genre's standard taxonomy. Main root material replaces Moppy in the playbook. Subroot material held alongside it. Or novelty, one article filed forgot. Two features of that gauntlet deserve respect because they are unusual among the series' 10 markets. And both, unusually, run in HeyMax's favor. First, the Japanese evaluation culture rewards exactly one thing HeyMax genuinely has, an unconditional rate. The guide's perennial complaint, the connective tissue of a decade of root journalism, is conditionality. The gold rank gates, the monthly windows, the ad point quotas, the campaign fine print chapter 5 documented as the incumbent's chosen weapon. A rail whose rate table is one line long is, in this genre, a legitimately notable object. There is nothing to decompose, and the genre's craft is decomposition. The realistic best case is not mass adoption. Chapter 7 closed that door. It is classification as the stable subroot. The thing the guides recommend holding alongside Moppy for rate risk diversification. The way they once recommended holding a second route against Sorochika's death. In a community whose core trauma is closure, the route that cannot be campaign cut is a real editorial category with real historical resonance. And it is winnable with a single credible year of conduct. Second, the trust bar is high but legible. And unusually for this series, HeyMax's honest answers are adequate. Run the file as the bloggers would. Is the operator backed and real? Venture backing on the register. A Visa partnership. Citable. Does it hold my cash? No. The no-custody architecture, provided first stays home, per Chapter 19, remains the strongest trust sentence in the portfolio. And Japan's Payment Services Act gives it a statutory frame the bloggers can verify themselves. Gratis points. No prepaid registration required. Nothing held that the law would make them deposit against. Has it ever devalued? Once. A core 3-2 documented in this series, it will be found and reported, and its rarity will count. Has it ever retreated from a market? Australia. It will lead every skeptical post. And the honest answer, the corridor stayed, the launch died, is survivable precisely because it is checkable. None of these answers is disqualifying. All of them will be published within weeks of launch, whether HeyMax addresses them or not. The Japanese reception, unlike Korea's, does not need HeyMax to be unknown. It needs the file to survive audit. And the file, with one asterisk on Australia and one on the suspension, survives. There is a useful precedent for the audit passing, and it is worth telling because it shows the machine saying yes. When built, the American Rent Rewards platform joined JAL's program, the Japanese blogs did exactly what this chapter predicts. Computed the effective rates, mapped the conditions, flagged what a Japanese reader could and could not use. The coverage was fair, precise, and neither hostile nor promotional. Foreign platforms are not rejected by reflex here, they are simply processed by the standard machinery, and the machinery's output tracks the input. The same precedent also carries the warning label. Built's coverage filed it correctly as unusable for Japanese residents, interesting object, wrong country, and moved on. Fair processing produces polite irrelevance just as readily as adoption. The machine does not bend the verdict. It computes it. Now the failure mode. Because it is the likeliest single outcome and it has a shape. It is not hostility, not scandal, not rejection. It is the fate of most foreign consumer software in Japan, polite irrelevance. An English-only app with a thin earned surface gets one round of curiosity coverage. Interesting rate, unusable product, a headline I can almost transliterate in advance. The guides file it under novelty. The comparison sites list it with an asterisk about language support, and the machine returns to Moppy. Japan does not reject foreign platforms, it simply declines to accommodate ones that have not accommodated it first. No rate table overcomes an interface the audience cannot read, support that cannot answer in Japanese, or balances denominated in a currency nobody prices intuitively. The gauntlet is winnable only by a product that shows up actually dressed for it. Japanese interface, Japanese support, yen-denominated clarity, and earn surface worth auditing. And launch materials that do the genre's arithmetic before the genre does. Which is to say, the reception chapter ends where the record chapter did, and the convergence is the point. Japan's audit machinery would treat a real entry fairly and a gesture brutally. And it can tell the difference in one editorial cycle because telling the difference is its business model. The variable is not the market's mood, which is neutral to curious. The variable is whether the thing that crosses the gate is worth the genre's respect. And that is entirely within HeyMax's control. What the dressed version costs and what it could return is finally the economics chapter's problem. And Japan's economics contain a number no other volume has produced. Chapter 13, Entry Economics. The arithmetic chapter with the usual discipline. Sourced numbers named as sourced, estimates named as estimates, and the model shown in full so it can be attacked. Japan's version has a property no other volumes did. The decisive comparison can be run entirely on published prices because the incumbents publish theirs and HeyMax's rate is a treaty. What follows is, to my knowledge, the first public side-by-side. Start with the revenue question every other volume started with. Can the affiliate rail fund the miles? Japan's inputs, assembled from chapters 3 and 8. Domestic e-commerce commissions in the 1 to 2% gross band that the Point-Site's 1% member rebates imply. Travel vertical commissions of 10 to 25% on the global contracts HeyMax already holds, and uncapped interchange behind it all for any future card-linked layer. Against Korea's wasteland, this is abundance. Against Taiwan's 3 to 5%, it is midfield with a far deeper travel seam. Verdict on the pool, sufficient. Japan does not fail on supply. No chapter after this one needs to revisit the question. Now the harder sum, the one Japan uniquely forces, the effective rate war priced from the consumer's side. Price the incumbent first, carefully, because the comparison is the chapter. A ground miler shopping through Moppy earns roughly 1% of spend in site points. Those convert to JAL at 50% base. So, half a JAL mile per 100 yen of portals spend, unconditional. In campaign months, the compliant gold rank held, 10,000 ad points earned, the monthly window hit, convert at an effective 80 to 96%. 0.8 to 0.96 miles per 100 yen, capped by the campaign's conversion ceiling, once per month. Call the practical incumbent band, half a mile unconditional, up to 0.96 conditional and capped. And note that the serious ground miler's real income comes from card bounties and offers on top, a surface this comparison deliberately holds aside, and Chapter 6 already granted the incumbents. Now price HeyMax's current shape against it. At the Singapore-calibrated base of about 1 max mile per Singapore dollar of qualifying spend, roughly 115 yen at 2026 exchange rates, HeyMax earns approximately 0.87 max miles per 100 yen, transferring 1-to-1 into JAL Mileage Bank. No window, no rank, no cap. 0.87 JAL miles per 100 yen, unconditional. Sit with that comparison because it is the whole domestic case in two numbers. 0.87, unconditional, versus half a mile unconditional and 0.96 conditional and capped. HeyMax's ordinary, unengineered, global default earn rate lands above Moppy's unconditional base by 74%. And within 9 points of the best campaign month in the country, with no rank, no window, no cap, no kiosk, no compliance spreadsheet. The stable rate pitch of Chapter 5 is not a consolation positioning for an inferior rate. It is the premium framing of a superior one. On the published tables, at the current yen, HeyMax's default proposition is the best unconditional yen to JAL rate in Japan. That is the number no other volume produced. Not a niche advantage, not an optionality story. A headline rate the genre's own arithmetic will confirm. Before the qualifications, make the comparison concrete with one worked month, because spoken arithmetic deserves a scene. Take a committed ground miler spending 100,000 yen a month through portals. On Moppy's base rate, that month yields 500 JAL miles. In a campaign month, with gold rank held and the ad point quota ground out through surveys and offers, it yields as much as 960, once, capped, and only for the compliant. The same 100,000 yen through HeyMax's current global shape yields roughly 870 JAL miles. No quota, no rank, no cap, no window. Every month, including the 11 months that are not campaign months. Across a full year, the unconditional 870 beats a realistic Moppy mix, 12 months of base plus every campaign executed perfectly, for all but the most disciplined operators. That is the sentence the comparison sites will eventually write in a table row. HeyMax's job is to still be standing, dressed, and unchanged when they write it. 3 honest qualifications, at full weight, because a number that good deserves its stress tests. The rate is partly an artifact of the weak yen and of Singapore-priced commissions. A 20% yen recovery shaves 0.87 towards 0.7. Merchant-level variance is real. And the deeper version, if Japanese market commissions on domestic merchants come in at the 1% gross floor of Chapter 8, HeyMax's own pass-through discipline could force the locally earned rate below the Singapore equivalent. Because the company funds miles from commission, not subsidy. The comparison holds today, robustly, on travel and cross-border inventory priced on regional contracts. Whether it holds on Rakuten Ichiba specifically depends on contracts not yet signed. The plan should assume the domestic merchant rate lands lower. The earned surface is the real constraint, exactly as Chapter 6 established. Moppy's band applies across a domestic offer wall, every convenience-adjacent brand, every Japanese insurer, every card issuer's bounty, that HeyMax cannot match at launch or soon after. A better rate on a tenth of the surface loses to a worse rate on everything for the mass market. But for the optimizer who routes specific high commission categories through the best rail, travel above all, where HeyMax's contracts are already superior, surface matters less than rate. And the routing habit is the community's defining skill. The realistic domestic beachhead is therefore the same population every chapter keeps finding from a different angle. The sophisticated segment, in the low hundreds of thousands, who already run multi-platform routing as a hobby and would add a rail the way they once added Hapitas. And the redemption side pays the surcharge toll. 0.87 miles per 100 yen, into a currency whose long-haul awards carry 130,000 yen of round-trip surcharges, is worth materially less than the same rate in 2024. The value case survives on the short-haul chart Chapter 9 showed surviving. And dies on the Trans-Pacific dream, the marketing must therefore never sell. Cost side in the series standard units, labeled as estimates throughout. A real Japanese entry, full localization, the first non-English build in company history, a Japanese card terms database, Japanese language support, plus market presence, comparison site listings, and the launch material arithmetic of Chapter 12. My estimate, consistent with the Taiwan and Korea models, but weighted for the language build and Tokyo costs, $500,000 to $800,000 for a credible first year, before any acquisition. A CRIP-style purchase of a small local team front-loads more capital, but collapses the timeline and the language wall simultaneously. And it remains, per Chapter 11, the only route that makes the December deadline even theoretically honest. Against the company's Series A resources, either number is affordable. Neither is trivial for a 30-person firm running 4 markets. Against that cost, 2 revenue geometries, and the relationship between them is the volume's financial architecture. The corridor geometry needs no entry at all. Inbound travel commissions on 42.68 million arrivals worth of demand from HeyMax's existing markets, plus JMB transfer utility deepening retention across the region. Running today. Margin positive, growing with every seat sold from Southeast Asia into Japan. The domestic geometry is the beachhead model. Hundreds of thousands of optimizers. Travel-led earn, the JMB rail as hook. Real, but slow, with revenue per user that only compounds as the earned surface fills in. Paying back on a Horizon No 30-person company should have promised a December date for. The economics stated once, Japan clears where Korea failed, pool sufficient, headline rate genuinely superior, statute friendly, and it stalls where every volume stalls. The binding constraint is not the money but the organization. And the organization, per Chapter 11, has not been built. The arithmetic says enter. The payroll says nobody is coming. The number that decides the verdict is not in this chapter. It is in the gap between a rail that shipped and a company that hasn't. The verdict will have to price that gap explicitly. What remains before it? The openings, the threats, the people, and the partners, counted honestly, in that order. Chapter 14, Opportunities. The bull case argued properly. Each opening priced against the record rather than against hope. 5 openings ranked by certainty, and the ranking itself is the chapter's finding. First and largest, the corridor that is already paying. Japan received 42.68 million visitors in the record year just ended, and the feeder markets include, in force, the exact places HeyMax has members and targets: Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Southeast Asia broadly. The Taiwan and Korea volumes measured 6.76 million and 9.46 million annual trips into Japan from just 2 of those markets. The weak yen that suppresses Japanese outbound is the subsidy driving everyone else in. Every one of those trips is bookable through travel inventory HeyMax already carries, at 10 to 25% commissions. And every JMB transfer that funds a Japan redemption now runs on a rail that is live. This is the only opportunity in the chapter that requires 0 additional investment. It is the Taiwan corridor thesis with a bigger corridor, a better award chart, and, unlike the E-Via rail, a counterparty that publicly wants inbound demand and sells miles wholesale to get it. The opportunity is not enter Japan. It is monetize Japan's destination harder, a destination hub in the existing app. JMB award guides tuned to the surviving short-haul chart. Corridor content through the creator channels HeyMax already runs. It compounds with every volume this series has written about the region. And it is the reason the Japanese question is being asked from a position of income, rather than hope. Second, the stable rail wedge into the world's deepest optimizer community. Chapter 13, Price the Rate, 0.87 unconditional, against Moppy's half-mile base and 0.96 conditional ceiling. Chapter 12, showed the audit machinery that would verify and publish exactly that comparison for free, because publishing rate comparisons is its business model. Assemble those 2 facts, and Japan's ground miler press becomes, seen from a marketer's chair, the cheapest sophisticated user acquisition channel in any of this series' 10 markets. A community whose editorial genre is precisely, we found a better route. With a decade of root death trauma that makes the rate that cannot be campaign cut emotionally resonant, rather than merely arithmetically true. And a comparison site industry commercially incentivized to list every credible new platform. HeyMax has never had a market where its core product property maps this exactly onto the incumbent system's documented weakness. Not Singapore, where the pitch was novelty. Not Hong Kong, where it was recovery. The wedge is narrow, per Chapter 7's lattice warning. It is also the sharpest the company will ever be handed. Third, destination poverty. The quiet one. A Japanese optimizer's points universe is vast but domestically terminal. Rakuten points become Rakuten spend. V points become card credit. And the airline routes out are the conditional Point-Site paths this book has priced, ending at exactly 2 programs. HeyMax's 20-plus transfer partners offer something no domestic platform sells at any price. Optionality. Star Alliance programs that reach ANA metal without ANA's gate. Qatar Avios, Turkish, Flying Blue Promotions. The rest of the roster this series has audited across 5 volumes. For the subset of Japanese travelers burned by JAL surcharges, a subset the JAL Shock actively manufactures, earn once, choose your program at redemption time, is a product Japan literally does not sell. It is a niche within a niche, and I book it at that size. But it is a niche with no competitor at all. And niches without competitors are where foreign platforms survive their first Japanese winter. Fourth, JAL's wholesale appetite as a widening door. The 2026 Promiscuity, Built, Rove, HeyMax, inside a year, reads as a program deliberately monetizing itself internationally, while inbound tourism is the national growth story. A counterparty in selling mode is a counterparty open to deeper integration. The concrete extensions in rough order of plausibility. Co-marketing to inbound travelers, where JAL's own commercial products for visitors align perfectly with HeyMax's corridor members. Earnside placement, JAL flights bookable through HeyMax for max miles earn, closing the loop the current single-sided rail leaves open. And further out, status hooks, mileage tier accelerators for high-volume transfer members, the kind of thing Hong Kong's Asia Miles relationship never offered. None of this is promised. All of it is the ordinary growth path of a feeder partnership, with a program that has demonstrated 3 times in 12 months that it signs. And a half entry between those, worth naming even though I will not number it, the inbound earned surface. 42 million visitors spend inside Japan, on hotels booked ahead, on activities booked mid-trip, on shopping that a card-linked layer could one day catch. Today, HeyMax monetizes the booking half of that from outside. A Japanese entity would eventually let it monetize the in-country half. Domestic merchant offers surface to traveling members, the department stores and electronics chains that already court tax-free spenders reaching HeyMax's corridor through its own app. That is the point where the corridor thesis and the domestic entry stop being separate strategies and become one loop, foreign members earning inside Japan, Japanese members earning toward the region. No incumbent point site can build that loop, because no incumbent point site has the foreign members. It is the one strategic object in this market that belongs to HeyMax by construction. Fifth and furthest out, the interchange pool. Japan's roughly 3%, uncapped, undisclosed interchange is the richest card economics substrate in the developed world, under active regulatory pressure toward transparency since 2022. If disclosure arrives and competition follows, the direction of travel, on a horizon of years, the space for a card-linked optimization layer opens in the world's second-largest card market. And Card Maximizer is the only product in this series' competitive files built for exactly that shape. This is a 2028 call option, not a 2026 plan. Gated on regulatory weather, JCB politics, and a Japanese card terms database that does not exist. I list it because optionality, this large, deserves a line in any honest bull case, and because no competitor anywhere is positioned to build it first. Ranked honestly, then, the corridor is real and current, the wedge is real and buildable, destination poverty is real and small, JAL depth is plausible and cheap to pursue. Interchange is a call option with a long expiry. Now notice what the ranking implies because it is the chapter's actual conclusion. The 2 biggest opportunities do not require winning the Japanese mass market at all. They require serving travelers to Japan, which is happening, and optimizers within a community of hundreds of thousands, which is addressable through a press that works for free. Nothing in the bull case needs HeyMax to beat Rakuten, out-campaign Moppy, or convert the median Japanese consumer. That is what makes it credible, and it is also what disciplines it. Every opportunity on this list dies if the company spends its way toward the mass market instead, which is Chapter 19's first prohibition. The bear case gets the same rigor next, and it has teeth the bull case does not. Chapter 15, Threats. The bear case, each threat priced with a probability and a severity, sequenced by how fast it kills, 5 threats, and the profile they compose is the strangest in the series. The first threat is the campaign war, and it is already scheduled. Moppy's August 2026 table shows 96% to JAL for the fully compliant, and the structural point is worse than the number. A Point-Site can price its JAL route above 100% for a month, whenever it wants, as marketing spend, the way retailers run loss leaders. HeyMax's 1-to-1 is a treaty rate, fixed by design and by identity. Moppy's is a dial turned monthly. If HeyMax's arrival ever registers as a competitive threat, the incumbent's cheapest response is a permanent feeling rotation of campaigns that keeps the effective ceiling above HeyMax's line, for whoever is willing to comply. 96 this month. 100 for launch month, 96 again. Financed by an advertising budget a listed company can sustain indefinitely, the defense is real but narrow. Campaigns are conditional, capped once a month and exhausting, and the segment HeyMax wants is precisely the one most tired of them, but price the asymmetry honestly. Moppy can outbid the headline rate any month it chooses, and HeyMax cannot follow without breaking the stable rail identity that is its entire pitch. A pricing war where one side's weapon is forbidden by its own positioning. Probability of a campaign response if HeyMax gains visible traction? High. Severity? Moderate. It caps growth and muddies the launch cycle. But it cannot kill the Wedge, because the Wedge's customer is buying the absence of exactly this game. The second threat is Rakuten's gravity, the ambient one. Chapter 7's conclusion stands and needs no re-argument. HeyMax cannot beat the lattice and should not try. The threat is not that Rakuten responds. A 30-person foreign app will never register on its radar, and merchant-side indifference is the realistic relationship. The threat is that the lattice's default pull keeps the addressable segment from ever widening beyond the optimizers. Every mainstream Japanese consumer's points life is already solved. At 59.3% household penetration, inside an ecosystem that pays them more the deeper they commit. Probability, certain because it is not an event but a boundary condition. Severity, it defines the ceiling. The mass market is not late to HeyMax. It is absent, permanently. Any model pricing Japanese growth beyond the sophisticated segment is fiction. I state this as a threat rather than a fact only because the temptation to forget it, in a launch deck, in a growth target, in a December press release, is itself the risk. The third threat is the value of the prize decaying underneath the whole game. The surcharge curve and the award space squeeze of Chapter 9 extended forward. The surcharge index has only ever risen. JMB's partner award space thinned in the same year 3 new feeder currencies joined. And if JAL responds to feeder-driven demand the way every airline in loyalty history eventually has, devaluing the chart, gating partner space, adding fees, the mile HeyMax's rail delivers becomes worth less each season, regardless of anything HeyMax does. This threat is the nastiest in the chapter because it is outside everyone's control and it attacks the Wedge's foundation. Rate stability into a depreciating destination is stability of the wrong variable. A fixed exchange rate into a falling currency. Probability of further erosion on some axis, better than even on the record of 2026 alone. Severity, high on the long-haul dream, which is already dead. Moderate on the regional chart, where the corridor actually redeems. And total, eventually, if the erosion reaches the short-haul table. Which is why Chapter 18 arms a kill criterion on exactly that line. The fourth threat is the ANA lock. Half the duopoly, the half whose roots decayed hardest, whose ground milers are hungriest for exactly the stability HeyMax sells, is closed. And Amex Japan's exclusive 1-to-1 into ANA Mileage Club suggests the gate is defended deliberately. By a counterparty with global reach, decades of Japanese franchise, and every incentive to keep a differentiator it presumably pays for. A one-airline HeyMax in a two-airline country serves at most half the ground miler community. The comparison sites will note it in the first table row. And the ANA side Rikumera, orphaned by Sorichika, orphaned by Mizuho, now down to a kiosk in Kyushu, will read about a stable rail they cannot use. Probability the gate opens on HeyMax's timeline. Low. Exclusivities of that kind renew until someone pays more. Severity, it halves the Wedge. And worse, it hands the incumbents a permanent talking point. The fifth threat is the deadline itself. And it is the one HeyMax controls. Japan by end of 2026 is now a public, dated promise with a live rail underneath it. The most falsifiable statement this promise-heavy company has ever made, which Chapter 10 counted as progress. The trap is that falsifiability cuts on schedule. If December arrives and the gate stays shut, the company converts its best documented market promise into its most public miss. In front of the audit press of Chapter 12. With this series, Taiwan and Korea volumes sitting in the record as precedent, and every future HeyMax announcement in every market gets priced against the miss. If December instead forces a toggle launch, gate opened, nothing localized, a gesture to keep the date, Chapter 12 already wrote the review. Polite irrelevance, one news cycle, novelty classification, and the subroute candidacy burned on arrival. In a market whose first impressions are archived in permanent, searchable guides that do not offer second launches. Probability of one of these two outcomes on the current hiring evidence of Chapter 11, uncomfortably high. The dressed launch needs a team that does not exist 5 months out. Severity and note the asymmetry. The honest miss is survivable and even repairable because the rail keeps proving seriousness. The burned launch is not. Because it forecloses the only entry path the economics support. If HeyMax reads one sentence of this volume, it should be that one. One threat conspicuously absent from this list deserves its absence explained. Regulation. Korea's volume carried statutory risk on every page. Australia's carried an interchange trauma. Japan's regulatory posture, Chapters 2 and 8 established, is the friendliest in the series after Taiwan's. The gratis points exemption is old, tested, and structural, and the stealth marketing rules are compliance work, not strategy risk. The only regulatory cloud on any horizon is the Interchange transparency campaign, which threatens a business HeyMax has not built yet, on a timeline longer than this volume's. A bear case with no regulatory chapter is a rarity in this series. Enjoy it and remember that its price was already paid in the architecture. It holds only while nothing is sold, nothing is held in custody, and first stays home. Sequence the 5 and the shape is clear, and stranger than any prior volume's risk profile, the fatal threats are not the incumbents. Moppy caps growth. Rakuten bounds the market, neither kills the wedge. The fatal threats are structural, the prize decaying, the second airline locked, or self-inflicted, the deadline forcing a bad launch, which yields the finding. Japan is the market where HeyMax's competition is least able to hurt it, and its own promise is most able to. The company's worst enemy in Japan is its own press release. The people who would referee all of it come next. Chapter 16, The Ground Miler Press. Every volume gives a chapter to the people who would actually move the needle. Japan's version is not an influencer chapter in the Instagram sense at all. It is a chapter about a press corps. The only market in this series where the creator layer is better described as an industry with editorial standards than as a scene with sponsorship rates. Map the structure because the plan of Chapter 18 roots through it. At the top, the veteran strategy bloggers, individuals who have run their sites for a decade or more, publishing route guides updated monthly. Their authority rests on documented personal results, the 200,000-mile years with screenshots, the campaign post-mortems with arithmetic, the closure obituaries written from experience. Their names function as brands. Their verdicts move consensus. Their independence is the asset, which is why they are not for hire. Below them, the poikatsu comparison industry. Commercial sites, some venture-backed, that rank point sites in sortable tables, data verify every campaign's effective rate to the decimal, and earn affiliate commissions on the signups their rankings drive. Around both, the YouTube explainer economy that onboards each year's cohort of newcomers. The accounts that live post campaign launches within minutes of the banner appearing. And the mainstream crossover, money magazines and morning shows running poikatsu features, because a hobby with millions of practitioners is general interest content. This is a standing editorial industry whose entire product is conversion rate journalism, publishing on a weekly cadence. In a genre where a rate table is the article. 3 properties of this machine matter strategically. Each one is unusual among this series' 10 markets. It is commercially aligned with new entrants, the sharpest difference from Korea. The comparison sites earn when readers sign up through their links. A new platform with a genuinely notable rate is content and inventory simultaneously, a story to publish and a commission to collect. HeyMax's existing referral architecture, the Max agent affiliate layer the company volume documented, already paying out in its home markets, plugs into this machine natively. List the program. Set the bounty at market rate against the Point-Site's own referral payouts. And the industry that audits you is also, on the same page, distributing you. That dual role is either an alignment or a conflict, depending entirely on whether the product survives the audit that shares the page with the sign-up link. Which is why every chapter of this volume keeps returning to the same gate: be worth the genre's respect, or stay home. It performs verification as a public good, on a schedule. When Moppy runs its 80% Dream campaign, the blogs publish the real arithmetic within days. The conversion cap, the rebate mechanics, the ad point hurdle, the effective rate for the compliant and the trap for the sloppy, who should bother and who should not. This is Chapter 12's audit machinery, seen from the supply side, and it cuts both ways with perfect symmetry. HeyMax's one-to-one survives that decomposition trivially. There is nothing to decompose. The rate table is one line, while any future asterisk, any transfer delay, any quiet condition will be documented within days and archived forever. A platform whose true numbers are its marketing numbers wins in this press automatically. One that relies on fine print loses automatically. The genre is, in effect, a standing regulatory regime run by hobbyists, and it is stricter than most governments this series has covered. And it archives. Japanese blog culture keeps everything. The Sorochika obituaries are still up, still linked, still shaping how newcomers learn the hobby's history. The Namoka pilgrimage guides accumulate revisions rather than replacements. A decade of campaign tables is a click away. A launch here is not a moment, but a permanent record. The first month's reviews will be the top search results for HeyMax's reputation in 2029, which is exactly why Chapter 15 rated the burned launch threat fatal, and why Chapter 19 will prohibit it in the strongest terms the series uses. What would courting this press actually look like? Not payment. The veteran blogger's authority is their independence. A paid post would be disclosed under the stealth marketing rules and discounted accordingly by an audience that reads disclosure labels the way it reads rate tables. The playbook is access and arithmetic. Launch materials in Japanese with the full rate table and every condition stated before anyone asks. The JAL relationship documented from both sides, the press will verify with JAL's own announcements anyway. A referral program priced at market against the Point-Site's payouts. Review access ahead of the gate opening, so the first wave of coverage is written on a working product rather than a waitlist. And the move none of the incumbents can copy: radical transparency about the commission pass-through. The exact disclosure this series documented as the foundation of the Singapore community's trust. In a genre whose founding craft is decomposing hidden margins, the platform that publishes its own margins is not just credible. It is a story, the kind the veteran bloggers write unprompted, which is the only kind that moves this market. Picture the launch week coverage going right, because the picture is the plan's actual target. Day 1, the comparison sites add the row, rate, conditions, referral link, and the row is clean. Day 3, a veteran blogger posts the deep audit, the arithmetic checked, the JAL announcement cross-referenced, the Australia question asked and answered with the corridor's history, verdict. Worth watching, hold alongside Moppy. Week 2, the YouTube explainers translate the audit for the newcomers, and the phrase that travels is the simple one: the rate that does not move. Month 2, the first user reports land, transfer screenshots, timing confirmations, the 1,000-mile minimum documented in practice. Month 6, the annual guide's new edition includes the route, with an asterisk about earned surface depth and a note that the rate has not moved since launch. Nothing in that sequence requires a yen of advertising. Every step of it requires the product to be exactly what it says. That is the whole campaign: be auditable and let the machine run. One more actor belongs in this chapter from the other direction, because the corridor thesis has a press too. The inbound-facing creator economy. English, Mandarin, Korean, and Bahasa content about how to do Japan on points is its own thriving genre. Award chart explainers, Tokyo on miles itineraries, surcharge avoidance guides. Serving exactly the 42 million arrival corridor of Chapter 14, in exactly the languages HeyMax's existing markets speak. HeyMax's Singaporean and Hong Kong creator relationships already produce this content shape. Pointing that machine at the JMB Rails corridor use case requires no Japanese entry at all, and its audience is already inside HeyMax's gate. The two presses, domestic Ricumera and inbound creator, cover the two theses of this volume, and only one of them is waiting on December. The asymmetry, stated once because it is the chapter's finding. In most markets, a foreign entrant must buy attention. The buying is the entry cost. In Japan's points economy, attention is editorially guaranteed the day the gate opens. Free, expert, permanent, and unforgiving. HeyMax gets one news cycle it did not pay for, in front of the most literate audience in the world, with no second chance. The entire marketing strategy reduces to one instruction: spend that cycle dressed. The partner's ledger comes next, and it opens with the best line this series has ever recorded. Chapter 17, Partners and Anchors. The partnership ledger in the series' standard order. What is held? What is reachable? What is closed? 9 volumes of this exercise have produced a doctrine, anchors decide entries, and Japan's ledger opens with the best first line the exercise has ever recorded, then goes quiet in a way no prior ledger has. Held, JAL, and held well. A live, one-to-one rail into the flag carriers program, signed during the exact window when JAL was opening its mileage bank to foreign feeders. Positioned alongside, built, and rove in the program's new international roster. The relationship the Korea volume could only model as a hypothetical, would the flag carrier even take the meeting, is in Japan a signed, shipped, publicly documented yes, with the counterparty's appetite proven programmatic by its other signings. And the held asset can widen without a single new counterparty, which is what makes it an anchor, rather than a feature. JAL sells inbound Japan as a commercial product, the visitor fare architecture, the tourism monetization strategy the national government scores. Every widening of the HeyMax relationship, co-marketing to corridor travelers, earnside flight bookings, eventually status hooks, runs with JAL's own strategy, rather than against it. Chapter 14, Price the extensions. The ledger's point is simpler. The hardest signature in any market this series has examined is already on paper. Held inherited the global roster. Marriott, Accor, Qatar Avios, Turkish, Flying Blue, the 20-plus transfer partners plus the travel booking spine all function for a Japanese member on day one because they were never market-gated. Chapter 14 booked this as destination poverty's answer. Modest, unique, already paid for. In ledger terms, a foreign entrant normally spends its first years assembling a partner roster. HeyMax's Japanese roster is complete before entry, minus the one name the closed list below records. Reachable, the affiliate rails. A8.net and its peers exist to onboard advertisers into new publishers. HeyMax enters as a publisher with regional volume history, not a supplicant, and the 22,000 program catalog prices the earned surface it could assemble without a single direct merchant negotiation. The travel vertical is already contracted regionally. The domestic e-commerce baseline is a network application away. The specialty long tail follows traffic, reachable on ordinary commercial terms at ordinary commercial speed. The one genuinely routine build in the Japanese ledger, and therefore the one with no excuse for not being underway. Reachable, harder, the second airline. ANA's gate is Amex guarded, and Chapter 15 rated it low probability on any near timeline. Nothing here revises that, but the ledger should record what would change the odds, because ledgers are for watching. ANA watched JAL sign 3 foreign feeders in a year, while its own international feeder roster stayed thin. ANA's inbound strategy needs the same international demand JAL is monetizing, and exclusivities expire on calendars nobody outside the contract can read. The realistic path is not outbidding Amex. HeyMax cannot and should not. It is being the incumbent regional partner with a clean JAL record when the exclusivity window renegotiates. A 2028 conversation. Creatable only by surviving 2027 with the JAL relationship exemplary. File under, patience. Reachable, speculative. A poikatsu incumbent as frenemy. The strangest entry in any ledger this series has drawn. Moppy's parent and its peers are listed companies whose JAL routes are marketing arrangements they perpetually rebuy at campaign prices. None of them holds a treaty. A HeyMax with Japanese presence could, in principle, become a Point-Site's own airline rail. The stable infrastructure behind an incumbent's front end. White-labeled, the way Crease Plus white-labels its stack. Wholesale, rather than retail. This is the business-to-business, Max Miles as a Service thread the company volume kept finding at the edges of HeyMax's positioning. And Japan, where the front-end war is unwinnable, but the back-end asset is unique, is oddly the market where wholesale logic is strongest. Speculative, unpriced, contingent on the incumbents ever wanting stability more than flexibility, which Chapter 5 showed they structurally do not. But it is the only path in the ledger that reaches the mass market at all. A ledger that omitted it would be incomplete. Between reachable and closed sits one relationship this ledger has never had to classify before: the hotel programs as Japanese distribution. Marriott and Accor, both already on HeyMax's transfer roster, run large Japanese portfolios and court the same inbound wave Chapter 1 measured. A Japanese member transferring max miles toward a hotel program for a domestic stay is a use case no airline route analysis captures, and hotel loyalty in Japan is its own substantial culture. The status run crowd overlaps heavily with the mileage run crowd. It is not an anchor. No hotel program anchors a market entry. But as secondary inventory for the destination poverty pitch, the hotel roster widens the audience beyond the two-airline frame every domestic incumbent is trapped in. File it as a footnote to held inherited, already signed, mildly underexploited, free. Closed, the giants, all 5, for the reasons Chapter 7 established and the ledger merely records. Rakuten needs nothing from anyone. Its realistic role is anonymous, merchant-side counterparty through its affiliate program, which requires no partnership and offers none. Docomo, KDDI, and SoftBank run their points as ecosystem glue for telco-scale businesses. Sumitomo Mitsui's V-Point empire is a bank's customer machine. None will partner with, sell to, or notice a 30-person Singaporean platform. The plan must be built on that assumption holding forever. Closed also, in the practical sense, JCB, a Japanese card-linked layer, needs the domestic scheme's cooperation. The domestic scheme has no Visa offers platform equivalent on offer to foreign startups. Card Maximizer therefore stops at the water's edge indefinitely. The interchange call option of Chapter 14 stays a call option. Absent from every list once more deliberately, Shopback, which never entered, and any international peer. Chapter 8's finding stands unamended. No foreign consumer rewards platform operates meaningfully in Japan. The competitive set is purely domestic. The partnership set is purely bilateral. And both facts favor whoever arrives with an airline treaty already signed, because the treaty is the one asset the domestic set has collectively declined to build. Read the ledger against every prior volume, and Japan's oddity repeats a final time. Now in partnership terms, Hong Kong entered with rails and bought the operation to activate them. Taiwan has a rail, no operation, and a promise this series scored not credible. Korea had neither rail nor plausible anchor. The volume said no. Japan has the best anchor in the series' history and nothing else. A ledger with a first line strong enough to build an entry on, and a blank page after it. Anchors decide entries, says the doctrine. Japan's anchor has decided. The entry hasn't noticed yet. The plan, next, is about what to write on that blank page, and what to refuse to. Chapter 18, The Corridor and the Wedge. The plan, as in every volume, this is my design, not HeyMax's, built from the preceding 17 chapters. Sequenced so each phase funds and de-risks the next, with success metrics attached where they can be measured and kill criteria armed where they must be. 4 phases, the 4th is optional. The 1st is already running. Phase 1, already running and deserving to be run harder, the corridor. Before a single Japanese user exists, Japan is HeyMax's best redemption story. The move is to productize what is currently incidental. Build the Japan destination hub inside the existing app. JMB optimized award guides, tuned to the short-haul chart that survived Chapter 9's shock, the Intra-Asia partner table, the 4,500-mile domestic awards, the routing generosity the community has mapped for a decade. Surcharge-aware routing advice, telling the honest arithmetic. Fly regional on miles, buy long-haul economy with cash, redeem premium if you must cross an ocean. Japan travel inventory surfaced at the 10 to 25% commissions already contracted. And the inbound creator channel of Chapter 16, fed with corridor content in the languages HeyMax's members already speak. Success metric, Japan-bound booking revenue, and JMB transfer volume from existing markets. Both measurable today, both already positive. This phase needs no gate opened, no yen, no Japanese. And every transfer deepens the JAL relationship, which is the collateral phase 2 borrows against. Phase 2, the decision phase, the dressed launch or the honest delay. The December promise forces a decision this year. The plan states the standard the decision must meet. If the promise is to be kept, it must be kept properly as one coordinated opening, plus 81 admitted to the gate. A Japanese interface, via the acquisition route of Chapter 11, if organic hiring cannot make the date. A first localization under deadline pressure is exactly what acquisitions are for. Yen-denominated display throughout. Japanese language support with real staffing behind it. An earn surface assembled from the affiliate networks with the travel verticals leading per Chapter 13's commission geometry. And launch materials built for the audit press per Chapter 16. Full rate table, every condition stated. Pass-through transparency. Review access before the gate opens. If those pieces cannot stand together by December, the right move is the one this company has never yet made in public. Redate the promise, explicitly, with the rail as proof of seriousness. The partnership is live, the localized product ships in March, is a sentence the audit press would report respectfully because it is checkable at both ends. A kept promise in March beats a gesture in December in every scenario Chapter 15 priced. The audit press forgives lateness. It archives fakeness. Phase 3, the Wedge, 18 months of deliberately narrow domestic life, resourced like a niche product because it is one. Target only the community Chapters 12 and 16 mapped, the ground milers, the subroute seekers, the surcharge burned, the destination poor. Position with one sentence and hold it with discipline. The unconditional route, 1-to-1 into JAL, every day, no rank, no window, no cap. Distribute through the machine that already exists and works for free. Comparison site listings on market rate referral terms. Veteran blogger access with full arithmetic. The transparency artifacts no incumbent can copy. Measure what the genre measures. Subroute classification in the major guides within 18 months. Not downloads. Not registrations, which the lattice-bound mass market will never supply and which Chapter 7 forbids chasing. And refuse, structurally, the 3 temptations that would each burn the position. No campaign war with Moppy, the identity is the non-campaign. No mass advertising, the segment distrusts it, and the ceiling makes it wasteful. No earned surface arms race, curated depth in travel and cross-border beats a thin imitation of an incumbent's offer wall. The routing habit means the segment multi-homes anyway. Phase 4, optionality, 2028 and beyond. each item gated on Phase 3 surviving in good standing. The ANA conversation, when the Amex exclusivity landscape shifts and a clean JAL record is the credential. Per Chapter 17, creatable only by patience. The wholesale play, if a poikatsu incumbent ever wants a real treaty rail behind its front end. The one mass-market path the ledger admits. Card maximizer, if the Trade Ministry's interchange push produces the disclosure regime a card-linked layer needs, and the JCB question finds an answer. And the inbound flywheel. Japanese merchants courting the corridor's members through HeyMax's earned surface. The two geometries of Chapter 13 finally meeting in the middle. Inbound revenue funding domestic presence, funding inbound depth. A word on staffing the plan, because Chapter 11 made the payroll the binding constraint, and a plan that ignores its own constraint is a wish. Phase 1 needs nobody new. It is content, curation, and contracts the existing team already manages. Phase 2 is the hire or buy decision in its purest form. Organic, a Japan lead, 2 localization engineers, a support pair, 5 people, 6 months, and the December date is already gone. Acquisition, a small Japanese fintech or travel tech team, crip-sized, bought for its people and its market fluency, expensive, fast, and proven by the company's own Hong Kong precedent. The plan is agnostic between them with one exception. Whichever path is chosen, the Japan lead must exist before the gate opens, with authority over the launch date. Entries run from Singapore by a growth team's spare cycles are how Australia happened. The single most predictive artifact this series knows of, the careers page, is also the cheapest one to fix. The kill criteria, standing armed through all 4 phases, stated as bright lines because gradual failures are the ones organizations rationalize. Kill the domestic expansion, retreat to the corridor, Australia style, which this plan explicitly treats as an honorable outcome rather than a failure, because Phase 1's economics survive any domestic outcome if any of these holds. 1. The JMB Rail's rate is cut, conditioned, or terminated, the Wedge's entire foundation. Without it, Japan reverts to a corridor-only market the day the announcement posts. 2. Surcharges extend to the regional chart at long-haul severity. The prize dies, and with it the redemption story every phase points toward. 3. 18 months of dressed domestic operation yields no sub-route classification in the major guides. The audit was run, fairly, by the best qualified referees on Earth, and lost. Believe them. 4. Moppy or a peer holds an unconditional rate above 1-to-1 for more than a quarter. The incumbents have decided to pay whatever the wedge costs to close. A treaty cannot outbid a dial. Take the corridor and go home. And the accounting identity underneath the whole design. Stated plainly, because every prior volume earned it the hard way. The corridor pays for the wedge. Phase 1's economics are positive today and improve with tourism's tailwind. Phases 2 and 3 are an investment the corridor's margin can carry, only if the spend stays niche-sized. Chapter 13's $500,000 to $800,000 first year, not a mass-market multiple of it. The moment the domestic plan requires mass-market spend to work, it has already failed the arithmetic and should trip the kill criteria before the money goes. Not after. Japan rewards the patient version of this company and punishes the promotional one. Which is, conveniently, the same lesson every volume of this series has ended on. That is the plan I would run. The next chapter is its photographic negative, the 5 mistakes most available to a company in HeyMax's position, each with a scar from an earlier volume attached. Chapter 19, What Not to Do. The negative space of the plan. 5 mistakes, each one available, each one tempting for a reason worth naming, each one with a scar from an earlier volume or an earlier chapter to prove it draws blood. This series has watched enough entries to know that markets are rarely lost to the impossible, they are lost to the plausible. Do not toggle launch to keep the date. The temptation is obvious. December approaches. The promise is public. And the gate is a settings change, flip +81, ship a press release, technically keep the word. The Australia volume documented what a market entry that is merely a settings change looks like. A prefix admitted, nothing localized behind it. 10 weeks of silence, and a quiet retreat nobody outside this series bothered to document. In Australia, the cost was small because nobody was watching. In Japan, the audit press of Chapter 12 is watching, professionally, with the JAL rail already on its radar. The launch review gets written within the week, archived forever, and cited by every guide and comparison table for years, because archiving first impressions is what the genre does. A toggle launch in December would spend the one free news cycle Chapter 16 identified on a product that fails the audit, converting the series' best market promise into its most expensive miss. If the dressed launch cannot ship by December, redate it publicly, with the rail as proof of seriousness. The scar to remember: Australia died of a launch that was only a toggle. Japan would archive the death. Do not enter the campaign war. The counter scenario writes itself, and someone in a growth meeting will eventually pitch it. Launch month. Moppy runs a 100% JAL campaign. The comparison tables show HeyMax second, and the proposal lands, launch boost, 1.2 miles per dollar limited time. The moment that ships, HeyMax becomes what it came to replace. Another conditional route in the rotation, auditable for fine print, comparable on campaign terms, against a listed incumbent whose marketing budget for this exact game is a rounding error and whose rate is a dial. The stable rail is only a wedge if it is never once unstable, in either direction. A temporary boost breaks the identity as surely as a cut, because the identity is the absence of temporariness. The correct response to Moppy's best month is patience and one sentence. The sentence the guides will eventually write unprompted, and next month, one of these two rates will still be there. The scar, Chapter 5's entire maintenance log. Every incumbent who chose volatility taught the community to distrust rates that move. That distrust is what HeyMax monetizes. Joining the volatility refunds the asset. Do not ship first into the Payment Services Act's teeth. The gratis points analysis of Chapter 2 keeps HeyMax outside the prepaid instrument regime, precisely because nothing is sold. Miles earned from shopping are free, in the statute's sense, and the no-custody architecture is simultaneously the trust story Chapter 12 graded adequate. HeyMax First, the subscription that delivers purchased value, would drag the Japanese entity toward prepaid instrument territory. Registration, disclosure duties, the 50% deposit obligation, the compliance apparatus of a licensed issuer, all to serve a premium tier no Japanese user has asked for. In the one market where the regulator's comfort is a competitive asset, there is an exemption for balances that expire within 6 months, and using it would gut the product. Japanese counsel might find a path and should be asked before anything moves. The scar, Korea's volume ran the same analysis against a harsher statute and concluded the architecture is the strategy. The market where that lesson pays most is the one with a real deposit regime, and an audit press that would explain it to consumers within a week. Do not fight Rakuten. Including by accident, nobody at HeyMax would propose competing with the lattice on purpose. Chapter 7 closed that door, and the door stays closed. The accidental version is subtler and therefore likelier. A general-purpose earn wall, a points-for-everything positioning, mass-market advertising language, a Japan's newest points app framing. Anything that files HeyMax in a consumer's mental taxonomy into the category Rakuten defines. Category placement is destiny in a market this settled. Enter as another points app and inherit a comparison against 59% household penetration and a stacking multiplier no rate can answer. Enter as the JAL route without conditions and inherit a comparison against Moppy's fine print, which Chapter 13 showed HeyMax wins on published numbers. The entire game is choosing the smaller, winnable comparison and holding the positioning discipline to stay in it through every marketing brief and App Store description. The scar, Korea, where the only survivable positioning was one the market's category structure made unreachable. Japan's category structure offers a reachable one. Squandering it by sounding general purpose would be the unforced version of Korea's forced error. Do not bet the entry on the long-haul dream. The aspirational marketing writes itself. Tokyo to Paris in business class. The trip of a lifetime on miles from groceries. And Chapter 9 showed why it is a trap with a trigger. The surcharge regime has priced exactly that redemption into absurdity, 130,000 yen of cash toll on the dream the copy would sell. And the audit press prices redemptions net of surcharges as a matter of genre convention. In the first table of the first review, marketing the dream invites the arithmetic that debunks it, in public, attached to HeyMax's name. Forever, the honest pitch is the regional one, the short-haul chart that survived, the corridor redemptions that clear. The steady earn, fast burn pattern Chapter 9 showed the surcharge era itself teaches. And honesty here is not just ethics but strategy, because Chapter 12's trust audit rewards the platform whose claims survive decomposition. And the genre decomposes everything. The scar: this series has never yet caught HeyMax overclaiming a redemption. The Accord devaluation was disclosed cleanly. Japan is the market where that record's continuation is worth more than any campaign. Notice before the summary who the enforcer of every prohibition is, because it is the same actor 5 times. Not a regulator, not a competitor. The archive. The toggle launch fails because the archive keeps the first review. The campaign war fails because the archive tracks every rate that ever moved. The first misstep fails because the archive would explain the deposit regime to 1 million readers in a week. The category error fails because the archive's taxonomy is where categories live. The long-haul dream fails because the archive prices redemptions net of surcharges, forever. In every prior market, HeyMax's mistakes were survivable because forgetting is what most markets do. Japan is the market that wrote everything down. The prohibitions are not rules imposed on the plan. They are descriptions of what the archive does to those who ignore it. 5 prohibitions, 1 common root, worth stating because it is the volume's ethic compressed. Every mistake on this list is a way of buying speed or size with the 2 assets that cannot be re-earned. The treaty rates credibility, and the first impression in front of the world's most literate points press. Speed and size are exactly what the December deadline and the growth instinct will demand. Credibility and the first impression are exactly what the entry runs on. The plan in Chapter 18 is slow and narrow because in Japan, slow and narrow is what solvent looks like. And because the market's own history, from Sorachika's death to the Surcharge Shock, is one long demonstration of what the community does to operators who spend trust to buy speed. It never forgets. That is the whole point of it. The verdict remains. Chapter 20, Should HeyMax Enter Japan? 19 chapters. The verdict in the series' required form, a decision, its working shown, and the facts that would falsify it. And because this is the series' 10th market, the verdict owes one more thing: an accounting of what Japan changes in the doctrine the previous 9 built. Assemble the ledger one final time, both columns at full weight. 4. The market is the world's most liquid points economy. 5 currencies with 500 million combined accounts. A legal architecture whose gratis points door stands statutorily open. A root culture with a decade of professionalized conversion practice. And demand rails, uncapped interchange around 3%, 500 billion yen of annual affiliate flow, rich enough to fund any earn model. The fit is the cleanest this series has measured. HeyMax's one structural product property, treaty rate stability, maps exactly onto the incumbent system's one documented, chosen weakness: campaign conditionality and root decay. The arithmetic holds on published prices: 0.87 unconditional JAL miles per 100 yen against Moppy's half-mile unconditional base and 0.96 conditional ceiling. The best unconditional yen to JAL rate in the country, verifiable from the incumbent's own tables. The anchor is signed, live, and warm. A flag carrier in documented feeder selling mode, with 2 co-signatories proving the appetite. The reception machinery would verify the pitch for free, in a genre whose trust audit HeyMax's honest file survives. And the corridor, 42.68 million inbound arrivals, heavily from HeyMax's existing markets, is monetizable today. is being monetized today and pays for everything else. Against, an English-only app behind a phone gate that excludes the entire market. 1 Japanese App Store rating. 0 Japanese hires, roles, or artifacts 5 months from a public deadline. A mass market structurally owned by an ecosystem lattice no entrant can cross and no plan should price. An incumbent that can outbid the headline rate any month it chooses as marketing spend. A second airline locked behind a competitor's exclusivity. A destination currency whose long-haul value was gutted by the surcharge shock in the same quarter the rail shipped, with the curve still pointing up. And a company of 30 whose December promise its own payroll contradicts. The verdict, yes, enter. The first unqualified yes in this series' 5 market volumes. And I will state exactly what it is a yes to because its precision is its defense. It is a yes to the Corridor First, Wedge Second plan of Chapter 18. At niche scale, funded by Corridor Economics, with the kill criteria armed and the 5 prohibitions of Chapter 19 standing. It is not a yes to a mass-market Japanese business. Chapter 7 closed that permanently, and any deck that projects one is fiction. It is not a yes to the December date, which Chapter 15 priced as the plan's single largest self-inflicted risk, and Chapter 18 explicitly licensed redating. It is a yes to this. The one market in the series where the rail preceded the promise's deadline, where the product's core property is the incumbent system's named weakness, where the audit machinery works in favor of whoever has the cleanest arithmetic, and HeyMax's arithmetic is cleanest, and where the entry's fixed costs are covered by revenue that exists whether or not the entry succeeds. The working compressed to its load-bearing beam. Korea's volume ended in a no because every layer said no. No spread, no anchor, no statute, no segment. Japan's layers disagree with each other. The market says yes, the record says no, and a split verdict needs a tiebreak. The tiebreak is the option pricing logic this series has used since Taiwan, and it runs in one direction. HeyMax has already paid for the option. The rail is built, the 18-month, counterparty-dependent, hardest asset. Done, the anchor is signed, the corridor is monetizing. The remaining cost to exercise, the localization, the gate, the dressed launch, the $500,000 to $800,000 of Chapter 13's estimate, is the smallest increment-to-value ratio of any move available to this company, in any market this series has examined. You do not let a paid-for option on the world's deepest points economy expire because the mass market is closed. The mass market was never the trade. You exercise at the strike the arithmetic supports, small, dressed, and honest about the date. The falsifiers on the record, each one measurable from outside. This verdict dies if the JMB rail's rate is cut, conditioned, or terminated. The foundation. Japan reverts to a corridor-only market the day it happens. If the surcharge regime reaches the regional chart at long-haul severity, the prize dies and the wedge with it. If Moppy or a peer sustains an unconditional rate above 1-to-1 beyond a quarter, the incumbents have chosen to buy the wedge closed, and a treaty cannot outbid a dial. If an Amex-style exclusivity extends to JAL at renewal, the rail orphans and the anchor logic inverts, and if December produces the toggle launch of Chapter 19. The first impression burns, and with it the only entry path the economics support. The yes converts to corridor only, retroactively. And watch the single most informative leading indicator, because it costs nothing to check weekly, the careers page. The week HeyMax posts its first Japanese-speaking role is the week Chapter 11's generous reading becomes the true one. Every week the page stays silent, the cynical reading compounds. And one paragraph on timing, because a yes without a clock is a platitude. The window this verdict lives in is not indefinite. JAL's feeder partner appetite is a strategy of this tourism cycle, programs that open can close and roster positions fill. Moppy's campaign ceiling at 96% is the incumbent's price today. Every quarter HeyMax delays is a quarter the incumbents can pre-position, whether by lobbying JAL for exclusivity clauses or by finally building the stable product their structure resists. The surcharge curve erodes the prize on its own schedule. and the December deadline converts from asset to liability the day it passes unkept. My honest read of the window: the entry this volume endorses is executable on these terms through 2027, degrades meaningfully after, and the single cheapest way to lose it is the one this company knows best, announcing, and then waiting. The option is paid for. Options decay. What Japan teaches the series, recorded as doctrine because the next volume inherits it. 9 markets taught, promises are worth approximately 0. Options are real. Anchors decide. Japan adds the 4th line. An exercised option changes the question. Taiwan's rail sat unexercised, and the volume scored the promise not credible. Japan's rail shipped against a deadline and forced this series for the first time to price a HeyMax promise above 0. The doctrine that emerges is not softer. It is sharper. Judge the company by which options it exercises, in what order, and whether the organization follows the infrastructure. Japan is where that judgment gets its cleanest test, on a public calendar. Refereed by the most literate Points community on Earth. One sentence for the series, which began 10 volumes ago with a company that talks in promises. Japan is the first market where HeyMax's actions arrived before its words. And that, more than any number in this book, is why the answer is yes. The first yes with a deadline attached. May they miss the deadline and keep the promise, rather than the reverse.